2 days. Drove back yesterday.
Okay, welcome everyone to our Tuesday, June 27th, 2023, 9 o'clock briefing session. Let the record reflect that we have four of the commissioners are here in person. Commissioner French will not be able to make it today, or at least for this morning. And we have our executive management team, and we are ready to get started with Justin Johnson.
Good morning, commissioners. Scott. We have a lot of different contracts to share this morning, so we're going to start off with our developmental disabilities. I'll turn it over to my division manager, Brian.
Thank you very much. Again, Brian Nichols with the Developmental Disabilities Program. Next slide, please. We have, of course, a contract with DDA, that's part of DSHS. It's an ongoing contract. Statute gives us authority to manage the developmental disabilities programs in our state. We have a new contract in front of us. We just got it recently. It's in the mix and will be in front of you, I'm sure, at some point shortly. We have a good increase in our reimbursement rate this time, a raise of $847,000 for a total of $10,898,906. So this will go through June of 2024. Though you'll see the services listed on there, those have not changed. We offer services to both Spokane and Pend Oreille County. Next slide, please. So we have, this just reiterates the program we have and the contract language we have. We have about 900 people that we're providing ongoing support for, adults through employment and community inclusion services, and about 100 children birth to 3. Next slide, please. So here's our request for EOCC, for you folks to approve the contract and let us get to work starting July 1st. I have one fun, what I call a fun fact to share, if you don't mind indulging me this. The people that are working in our programs, they're working real jobs in our community. In calendar year 2022, they earned a total of $3,287,000. That's money that goes right back into our local economy. It pays taxes and supports goods and services that they buy, and it also reduces their reliance on unearned benefits such as SSI, food stamps, and rent subsidy. So it's really a win-win prospect for all of our citizens here. We have people doing productive things in the community, feeling good about the fact that they have a job, and contributing economically to our county. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
One small addition to that, we've been working with one of the providers there to actually expand prevention as well, education for our members. I'll share a little bit about that one too. Specifically with
with the ARC program. Yes. Oh, yes. Certainly. I'm sorry. We have ongoing contracts, several contracts with ARC of Spokane, a large nonprofit entity. We're going to be helping, replace some of the money they've lost with the grant for sexual abuse awareness and prevention training throughout our community for folks with developmental disabilities. Oh, one more quick thing I forgot is that we do have support from DDA. We came and asked you last time to support the concept of raising the rate lids that we're bound to. We did get some relief. It's not what the rate study had asked for, but I believe it's enough to keep our provider infrastructure stable at this point.
it's exciting for us to be able to, again, further expand resources for vulnerable populations in our region, further enhancing a more vibrant and healthy community. All right, let's move on to the meaty Healthcare Authority contract. So we briefed about this contract earlier this year, and it's coming back around. The state decided to redo their contract and issue a new one. Not a lot of significant changes in the actual service coverage that we are required to provide, but it does look like with the legislative changes and the additional funding, the state decided to issue new contracts. Again, we're still required to do the same things, voluntary treatment services, inpatient and psychiatric services, and crisis services are primary bread and butter. But it does add additional programming that we did not have before. Next slide. So one of the major programs that it actually adds this year is some True Blood enhancement funding that we're able to maintain here. So in the closing of the crisis stabilization facility with FBH, there was some additional money that the state was going to reallocate. We, over the last year, negotiated to ensure that that didn't get taken out of our region. So that's actually going to be applied to Passages Family Support's new respite center for peers. And so we expect it to open in August. So that was a great win for us to maintain money within our region. We also got a new program for a youth inpatient navigator, which allows for us to support families and enhance engagement for resource for those that are experiencing severe or significant psychiatric or substance use impairment for their youth and families in a hospital setting. The goal here being, if we've got a backlog of youth in an acute setting, let's do something in the community to divert or prevent and provide extra resources. We made the decision to actually run that out of our house instead of sub-delegating it out. We get to maximize the resources there, and we've been working with the HR department to look at how that staffing would look like. So we're really excited about getting that going here, beginning July 1. You know what it is, opening it up and trying to find the right people. So that's exciting. And of course, we also had additional funding that will be expanded in January 1st with the additional allocation of funding that the state got in the legislative session. So really appreciative of our representatives increasing a 15% allocation to non-Medicaid and Medicaid services. Next slide. Here's some of our subsequent provider subcontracts that will go out. One minor change to this, this was not removed here because this was our previous list. Daybreak Youth Services, as recognized, is no longer a contract with Spokane County because they no longer have a contract and or license with Department of Health, and it does appear that all individuals have been exited from their facilities and the state is still working with them. So that is not one agency that will be included, but the rest will remain. In fact, we'll be adding some, which I'll be talking about in the next contracts. Next slide. So the request would be, as we've done previously, to continue the ACA contract and approve that. As consent agenda. Next slide. The next contract that the state will be issuing out is our HARPS contract. This is Housing and Recovery through Peer Services. This provides support services and supportive living services for individuals experiencing a significant or severe mental health and or substance use, usually co-occurring. And this provides not only housing subsidies for them, but that supportive services that we know is necessary for them to be successful in that. Skill building, food and eating, nutrition, and then really just maintenance in that home setting. So this is currently goes through our counseling recovery services. The program is widely prolific throughout our community, connected with a lot of providers. We're just requesting that this be continued. They did, and this was approved at our last review, an extension of another peer being added to the team to support that peer-to-peer engagement in the community. So that's part of this contract that will be continued. Again, our team is doing a wonderful job, and the state is wanting us to continue that work here in the county. Next slide. Again, our request is to also approve this contract with ACA for the HARPS. Department of Commerce grant, this is also coming in July. This is not new, but there is a new part to it. So Department of Commerce grant that does the CBRA, Community Behavioral Health Rental Assistance, is specifically tied to those experiencing severe persistent mental illness and supporting them, again, similar to the HARPS, but without the peer companionship on that. Essentially, we work with individuals to do rental subsidies and long-term bridge subsidies so that they can maintain their housing and then remain successful. So long-term viability for individuals with significant and persistent mental illness is housing support. And we provide this not only for the long-term, but also for emergency basis. One of the additions they did add was, because we're doing such a great job, they added Catholic Charities contract that they had delegated out separately to our bevy of contracts. So now we have Catholic Charities and an additional increase in the allocation. We do anticipate that Pend Oreille County will also be added on. So we'll have Pend Oreille, Spokane counties, Catholic Charities in Spokane County, so CARES and Catholic Charities for the bulk of the money in Spokane County. And then as well as Stevens County runs a program up in Ferry and Lincoln. Next slide. This speaks to those areas that are covered. What we do not have covered yet is Adams County. We have yet to find any provider who wants to take that on after repeated attempts. So we're still attempting to engage, but it's been wildly successful. We've been able to expend almost all the money DOC gets going right back into the communities to support housing for those that are in need. Next slide. Yes.
So are those like housing vouchers, or are they units that are dedicated that you keep rented? Like, how does that work for folks?
So it's closer akin to the vouchers, but it's a rental subsidy. So we don't, like the federal government gives those vouchers that are right set. These are guaranteed over a period of time, but they don't, there's not an issued set number. We just have until the funds are expended. So depending on the
The
need.
agencies use these to house folks. Are they mostly coming out of a center or out of a facility?
Yeah, so generally they're referred to the program from a behavioral health provider, and we pay the actual rental property directly as
Okay.
part of that. So they're getting
But you've been
paid.
able to get rental properties and not have challenges?
The challenges are always there, more so in the frontier world. There's just no housing. So
Right.
we actually have done quite a bit of the rental or emergency subsidies in some of the facilities until they're able to get into a long-term. But yeah, our goal is to do more long-term subsidies. Getting someone in a stable housing long-term increases success long-term. Yeah. No, but there's always challenges. Our hope is that we put this Department of Commerce, can we change some of the money into project grants to support additional housing projects in frontier rural? There's two that have been promising in the frontier regions where they want to build apartment complexes.
Right.
But we can't use this money to help the project, we can only do it for the subsidy. So we're working on them. They said next year, hopefully, they'll open that up and we can begin looking at project-based support. And of course, this is up for recommendation for the board to approve so we can continue the great work that we're doing here, the major change in Catholic Charities.
Thank you. I just want to, for the record, note that Commissioner French has joined us, so thank you.
Next slide. And then another program that is coming out here July 1, our DSHS contract for diversion services through the Office of Forensic Mental Health. This is in partnership with our detention services partners to provide diversionary services for those that are looking at competency restoration. So the goal is if they're being, technically it's gross misdemeanors, but some felonies may actually apply. If they're looking at going down that route and recognizing it's a lengthy and arduous process and expensive, the goal is for prosecutors then to defer to our program, which they can dismiss charges over a period of time, and then our team follows them in the community to provide services. It's actually a very amazing program for the diversion aspect. However, the state had high expectations back when they put this into place in 2017. And since then, we've not been able to meet the high bar or level of total participants enrolled. So we've been working with detention services and Scott here to decide kind of how we're going to move forward. This year, it looks like we can continue the project, but with a reduction in the overall allocation of members that can be added and a slight decrease in the overall funding, we do anticipate some major changes will need to occur next year to keep the program going. Again, it isn't because we aren't successful in that area or there's not partnerships, which has been great. Prosecutor's Office of Public Defense have been amazing. It's just simply the dynamics for some of the individuals referred have changed over the years, which was not what they anticipated in 2017. Next slide. And so we're requesting continuation of this project as well, providing those diversion services in our region. Spokane County. Next slide.
Madam Chair, could I ask one
Yes.
question? So with these funding sources, since I'm new and still learning how this works, what happens if you don't spend down all? What if the sub, the contract folks that you have doing the work in the community don't actually expend all the funds? Do you return them to the state or do they roll over into the next year?
Depends on the fund source. Healthcare Authority, this has been an ongoing issue. We could submit a spending plan. So for the Healthcare Authority funds, a lot of the provisos are specifically set for that purpose, and so it's all returned. CJTA, there's certain funding with AOT, court-based services, those are all returned. They don't take it back immediately, which is always the challenge. We sit on those until the state decides they want to do that. This year, they're hammering that hard. They want it all back. And so they're looking at expending those. For Department of Commerce, they want us to expend it all because the state will actually reduce their allocation, but they end up taking it back as well.
Okay.
And then with this program, we can't get it. We have to submit a voucher to get the money. And so they actually don't get the full upfront. We only can expend up to that amount through them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
So
complicated.
are you constantly kind of checking with, like you said, Catholic Charities is gonna be part of that behavioral health housing funding? Are you constantly checking to see if they're expending the funds so that they are staying in our community and?
Yes. In fact, we've been really successful with the CBRA. Almost every year, that program with Department of Commerce is expended.
Okay.
In fact, the challenge is we don't have enough to really support some of the more long-term individuals, because once they're set, they're set. I mean, we're going to pay for them until they're stable. And then we don't have any more money to expend than the previous year because that commitment still carries over. And so that's been wildly successful, which is why they added more to us. The other ones are a little bit harder. Proviso, when the state says you can only use it for this, but they don't really think about it, it's hard to expend that money. And then King County always wants it. So that's always fun.
Thank you.
And the last project put forward, this is actually one that we briefed the board back in fall last year. It's a brand new transitional support pilot that assists individuals while they're in transitional housing centers. Next slide. Primarily shelters. And the goal here was to do support for the intangibles. When individuals in a homeless shelter, oftentimes when they need to be enrolled with outpatient, they have to do an intake, they have to identify a diagnosis, and most individuals just need support, engagement, they need some sort of helping hand to get them to place, which you can't bill for Medicaid. So VOA have been partnering with us for a long time to say, well, how do we get this funded if we're helping individuals where we can't say they're enrolled with Medicaid and then can bill that out? So we worked with them to identify if we had support personnel stationed in 2 shelters who basically can do all of that engagement, connection, community coordination, and provide a limited set of brief intervention. Maybe that would be the connecting point to get them into necessary services. And then overall, reduce some of the acuity we're seeing in a housing center, and then long-term have more successful outcomes when those individuals transition to more permanent housing. Then we realized that we can't just say, you need services, we also need to say, can we get you connected to those? So part of this contract is also to say you will provide outpatient services if it's identified that the need exists. So you can provide support services, but the moment a behavioral health condition is there and they're not enrolled, they can transition right into outpatient. And we briefed the board on this last year, but when we put the contract out for procurement, no one bid. And we're like, what's going on here? These people expressed interest, but no one bid. We did it again, no one bid. And we're like, okay, well, I guess no one wants it. And then we found out, no, apparently they emailed another Justin somewhere else. And so,
Another Justin Johnson?
and they're like, why did you ever respond to us? And
There's only one.
exactly. And I said, well, I work for Spokane County, not for, I'm not sure where they emailed. So we met with them, and because we had already gone through all the procurement process, we were able to award directly to VOA, and they had given us really promising program. And so that's what we're recommending to the board, is that you approve the contract for the service behavioral pilot that we've already briefed the board on, but to continue now that with VOA to provide those services. This is the first time we've ever done this in Spokane County. So it's really exciting for us in one way, which is we have to be innovative and support those in a transitional housing setting. But at the same time, it's going to require a lot of follow-up to make sure that what is being done is really following the necessary support for long-term viability. Next slide. Right now, the total contract is about 121,000. We're using our mineral sales tax reserves, and we do anticipate that as this program becomes more viable and engaging them, and maybe getting state-funded services to be in conjunction with this, we can really tap into and leverage existing resources that may be available at the state. Next slide.
I was just going to say that, it was, I was having a meeting with Fawn Schott, and we were seeing, she was saying, as the state looks at this continuum of care, one of the gaps was really, having the provider, a mental health provider in a facility, because trying to get people to and from appointments and all of that is harder. And so she really saw this gap, which no one would cover the gaps at that point in time. And so this was a way that we could see using mental health sales tax dollars, within a transitional facility, shelter. So to get them the help that they need in the stabilization there on site and have that person. So I'm super excited about this pilot program to see what it can do. And that's where, I think this is some of the best uses of these dollars, are finding where those gaps are and how we can make a difference, with them. So I'm excited about it. So thank you, Justin, for helping me figure it out.
Well, and I appreciate that, because it really, Spokane County is really investing in the continuum of care. Instead of saying we're dealing with the problem as it arises, we're saying preventative services upstream and then also follow up downstream. So Spokane County, I firmly believe our department, in conjunction with where the commissioners have led, is really looking at a more continuous service from front to end, which is, again, much more evidence-based and looks at much more long-term viability in terms of individuals having more productive and healthier outcomes. So I think we're leading the charge on this. The goal is to get the state on board as well. So the last request on here is just to approve this contract with VOA for the pilot. I think that is.
And I apologize, because yes, it is to have us do the pilot project so we can show them the need and then have the state, then help in the future with this, with other shelters and all of that. So things so that Spokane County is being innovative and
Yes.
making happen. So thank you, Justin.
Yes. Any questions?
So the issue is, so there's kind of a gap where someone might not actually be being seen by, they haven't been diagnosed or they're not receiving Medicaid related services, but this is like a different way to provide them maybe some therapeutic care. Is that,
Yeah.
why wouldn't this be Medicaid eligible for
So-
reimbursement?
And that's a great question. So individuals need to seek and approve and then get a diagnosis on an intake to be able to access services. There's a lot of preventative care, but a lot of the Medicaid entities in our region don't and have not invested in that, even though they get some non-Medicaid. And so really what we're looking at is we're seeing individuals come in, and VOA has expressed this, that need and are getting more acute. And if we could divert on the earlier end, then this would prevent them from actually needing maybe more intensive services or even hospital setting. When they approach some of those Medicaid providers, they say, essentially, it's those other monies that we're using to support existing individuals because they're more acute, so we can't invest in new projects like this one to prevent. There's really no mandate for preventative services other than what could be paid, like substance use. And really, we said, well, that's a key area, because the moment they roll into that other one, we're seeing more and more acuity. So they could, they're not, which is why we stepped forward and said, let's do this. And oftentimes when we lead the way, they'll come back and they'll say, okay, yeah, this is, because I can say at that point, we're serving 60% of your members. Maybe you should be supporting us and achieving this goal of doing prevention. So that's kind of the process for this, but really everyone has said it's not their problem or they don't have the money.
You say your members, you mean who's the members?
The Medicaid.
Okay.
Yeah, managed care organizations call
Right,
their
right, right.
members. We essentially don't have members, we just have residents. So it's all of ours, which is kind of why we invested that.
Just real quick, back to the DDA rate lid increase, was that a legislative action that changed that, or what? How did that go?
No, that worked out in negotiation with DDA directly, their senior management, and they did pay attention to all the input they got, including from counties, county elected officials, to give DDA some flexibility to raise that. So again, thank you for your support.
Good news.
Great news.
I'm sorry.
All right,
Okay,
thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you for your ongoing
Thanks
support.
for kind of
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate all the work you guys are doing, so.
So basically, I get it, like, they don't have.
See Chris Weeks.
I think Gina's getting
Great.
Signs, it's not like acute. They can maybe say counseling. They can be official.
Good morning, hello.
Good
Morning.
How
are you?
Yeah, good,
From the spy away.
good, okay, we're gonna just let you, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. For anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Chris Weiss, Director of Business Operations for the Sheriff's Office. And today I was invited to speak on two different topics. The first one on the registered sex offender address verification program. This is a state legislative funding over the last biennium, or what, 23-25, they're gonna be giving 9.9 million out. And then, so the local agencies are gonna be receiving 4.8 million. And of that, Spokane County will receive 312,000. What that does is that requires us to meet the RCW of face-to-face verification of the address. So of that 312, it supports a registered sex offender coordinator, 60% of one of our investigators, and 60,000 then goes to the city for one of their investigators. And we have currently 1,879 persons on that list. And in 11 years ago, we had 7 people focusing on the efforts of this requirement from the state. And we currently have 3. So that's where the money goes. They're definitely busy.
So you're just, the request is for us to accept the grant,
Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff's Office. Okay, any questions for Chris?
So is that the full-time duties? Hi.
Hi,
Nice to
how are
meet
you? Nice to meet you.
Is that the full-time duties then of those 2 investigators, or do they investigate other things as well? You said it's 60% of their.
Yes, so our investigator, it pays for 60% of his efforts. He does other work in conjunction with this.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
How many sex offenders address, how many people are they doing this for?
We how many offenders?
Yes.
We currently have 1,879 on the list. The majority being level 1. The level 2 and level 3 have different requirements. So level 1 is annually, they have to meet face to face. Level 2 is every 6 months, and level 3s are every 3 months.
Not seen any other questions, so you can go
Okay.
on to the next one.
I'll try to get you back on track here. Oh, so my next one, and I think you guys are probably asking for the same thing. On behalf of Sheriff Knowles, I'm requesting an extension of the hiring bonus program for the Sheriff's Office. We currently have 35 open positions of the 264 funded. And when you start looking at the matrix of the age of our personnel, average age is 40. But 35 of that 221 that we have filled on the commission side, 35 of them are eligible for retirement. So either now or coming up this year, they will be at 52 years or older. So 15% of the population. Now, nobody's gonna say that they're all gonna be leaving at the same time. We know that. But in 2021, we had, bless you, we had 41 retired in 20, and then another 30 in 21. So even if half of the 35 ended up retiring, it would be devastating to the overtime, to the minimum staffing levels. And so if you were to approve this request, basically we've made some modifications to the current program to where it would extend it out 3 years instead of them getting their second half in the after they end probation. So it really removes a lot of the financial risk associated with an individual not making probation, not making the training, and then keeps them around rather than just, getting the second half at the end of their probation. It maintains the idea that they would stick around for 3 years as opposed to some of them leaving at the end of their first year.
Commissioner French.
Of the folks that we have paid the sign-in bonus, I think this is going on our third year now, second or third year. How many of them are still here?
The majority of them, we've only had a handful, but the problem was that they were laterals, and so they were receiving the 25,000. That's why we chose to modify the payout, because we will have paid out 125,000 with individuals that basically left right after their probation ended. So they received their second 12/5, and then they were gone.
So one of the other boards that I sit on, we are now changing our approach, and instead of offering signing bonuses, we're offering retention bonuses that would be paid out like year 3, year 4, year 5, so that we can encourage folks that have obviously seasoned and trained to extend their time as opposed to retiring and taking early retirement and stuff. Is that something that might be worthy of considering with because you indicated that they're retiring at age 52, and so there's quite a bit of time between there and when they can start collecting Social Security and stuff, and so they're on pension. Is there any thought to, would it be better to pay retention bonus as opposed to a signing bonus and get the seasoned people to stay on longer?
Depending on who you ask, yes. So if I was commissioned, I'd say absolutely. And I think that
And
idea.
I asked you then.
I think that idea has merit, because while we can all agree that not everybody's gonna be taking off at 52, the likelihood of the majority of them, given another set of circumstances that impacts the general population, they could. I would say that is definitely an idea that would be welcomed by many of the commissioned who potentially would be considering leaving. I know the last round of yes.
I would say that was part of why we looked at retention bonuses a couple of years ago before the contract, and that's why we got the contract up to where it needed to be. So we didn't do the retention bonuses. Right. So that was where we bumped them to get their salary, so they were comparable, to retain them that way. And what I've noted in private industry, talking to several CEOs, the retention bonuses don't actually work as well. Because the people that are staying for, a couple $1,000s a year, they're already staying. That $2,000 a year or whatever it is, isn't what's gonna keep them here. So it's better to keep, everybody on a good salary course, than on the retention bonus side. And today we're just talking about, so that's a discussion that we can have, and Ashley, I'm sure would love to weigh in on that. But today we're just, talking about the
Signing bonus.
sign-on bonuses.
No, I know, and what we're talking about doing is much more than a couple $1,000 a year. It's much more significant than that, but we're at risk of losing key people and stuff, so that's why.
So, and how many people are you trying to retain in that environment?
4.
Yeah, so different than a whole group of people. So, so a couple of questions I have on the sign-up bonus side is, so it's like, so to renew this, I would want to see the stats as to how many people have gotten the bonuses, how many people has it helped us in recruiting and keeping people here, before I'd be willing to look at extending. It's like that's kind of the data stuff that I need.
Okay.
To see, because you can have it out there, and what's that dollar amount? So like you said that John is, the sheriff is looking at changing how some of it's being made up. So I'd like to see kind of where we're at, what we'd already agreed to versus what you'd like it to look at in the future.
And I had started looking at the actual stats specific to just the bonuses, but then we had changed it. We had bumped up the dollar amount, and I didn't know if that was going to factor into any of the impact of the results. Then I went back 10 years, and I said, okay, of our total attrition rate, how does that apply to our hiring? And the results were a bit staggering. So it was like, if we included 23, which we're not out of yet, we're at, our average attrition is 24.6 per year. So over 10 years, 246 we've lost, whether it's firing, resignation, or termination. The amount that we've hired is 24.5 per year, 245. Now, if you take out 23 from that, then we're at about 26 attrition, 26.5 hiring. So regardless, and here's the other thing too, if I look at just the bonus segment, then do I take out 21 and 22? Because those were years that had extraordinary circumstances associated with it too. So I felt in order to serve you best with the stats, I went back a full 10 years, and then that couples all of the changes together. But I can absolutely redo any of the stats however you'd like. If you want just bonus, I can do that too.
Okay, just a second, Ashley, Commissioner Kearns.
So when we started this program under the previous sheriff, it was an up to 25,000, and the sheriff even said, that wouldn't be kind of the first offer to bring people, that it would be if he needed to go to 20. Has anybody been given less than 25 as a sign-on bonus?
So the current construct of the program is 12,005 when they walk into the door. That's if they're laterals. If they're entry level, they get 5, and then the remaining 5 at the end of the probation period.
But
With
of the laterals, did anybody get less than 25?
Yes, there were individuals that left before their probation was over.
Okay, but no,
Not over.
so,
No.
okay, so everybody was offered, okay. I'm just wondering, when the previous sheriff, it was like, I want the ability to go up to 25 if I have to coax someone in, but sort of the intent, well, if I can get them for 10, if I can get them for 15,
that wasn't
I would do that, but if they talked me up to 25, I would go up to 25, was sort of the concept,
And
that
the problem
it wasn't
that we
used
had
that
with
way.
And I'll let Ashley speak on that, is the fact that the language has to be contained in the hiring policy with the day chart.
Which the language is
It
there.
is.
So,
It's up to.
yeah, so the policy, the way that it's currently written is for the sheriff's office specifically, up to $25,000 for lateral and intermediate lateral, up to $10,000 for entry deputy, and for other regular full-time positions, up to $7,500 with specific positions and bonus amounts predetermined by the sheriff's admin and HR director. So over the last few years, the 25,000 is what has been for the lateral. 10,000 is offered to the entry deputy, and then the 7,500 for other positions. When Todd was still here, he and I talked up front what positions are difficult to recruit. So back to our policy, difficult to recruit, don't have many candidates, have been open for a long time. So we had some STAs and grant that was open for a couple of years that we determined would include the up to 75 language, but it always came in at the 75. So I have been working with the sheriff's office, and we've talked about a lot of these same stats, but I think it would be helpful to commissioners for you guys to really see how much have we paid, how much has retained, how many have left after 6 months, how many have left at the end of the year. Just for overall awareness, the county is trending at about 19% turnover right now across all departments, so turnover is still high. On the other side of this, we did, to your point, for history for our new commissioners, this program went in right after we landed the new contract. And so we didn't really have time to see what the new wages did before the sign-on came in. But that said, the city just negotiated their new contract, and they followed suit with what we did, which is recognizing lateral with years of service. So that could mix things up again. So I definitely, think that this is one that, there's a lot of data that we could slice different ways, and I think understanding that maybe especially Mary or Commissioner Ginney said that you'd like to see that is stuff that I know that they've been working on. I asked very similar questions. Let's look at this from different angles to figure out what makes sense. I do appreciate, and adore the fact that they're looking at a different payout schedule, especially if not just handing someone 10 grand and having them walk out the door. I think it's really worth looking at what makes sense for a payout schedule as well. But also then does it still work to retain people? Am I gonna stay for $250 or $500 a month, right? I think those are conversations we probably need to look at the data behind a bit more. The sheriff's office does have some open positions, but I think it's probably important for Randy to be able to really look at what's funded, because we also looked at, even though they're open, we did some vacancy adjustments, right? So the other thing is really looking at what's in budget, how much do we have left to pay for these things, and forecasting that for the next couple of years, as we know we're not probably gonna see budget increases looking at sales tax. So that's all the stuff that we've kind of been looking at behind the scenes. And I just don't know if we have that to present today for this conversation.
So I guess, and I know detention services is here with the same thing. So which is why, when Scott and I were talking about the agenda, we did want to put them together because we have to look at it, the commissioners, we've got to look at this holistically. Not just department by department. And so we know that we have needs for deputies, and we know we have needs for corrections officers. So I guess too, I would just want to make sure that we are working with the HR because these things affect our contracts as well. And I want to make sure that we're not doing anything that would be working against us on our contracts. Ashley, I guess that's probably the best thing. Because yes, seeing the sheriffs or the city just now with all the rate increases that they just did with their contract, and we're, as we know, we're going into tougher budget times, what that's going to mean for us, because we want to make sure we're retaining the people and the best and recruiting the best on. So it's not that I'm, in my mind, this may need to get baked a little bit more.
Sure, I could have it by today. So who would you like me to send it to?
You can schedule next week.
Yeah,
Not next week, the following week.
Yeah, I think it's just give us a little bit of time to,
Okay.
Because we're off next week, so it could be the following week to come back and then make sure that you're working with the HR to make sure that it's all there. Commissioner Waldron, if you raise your hand.
So I'm looking at the board resolution from last March. Was it just supposed to be for 1 year? Is that,
Expires June 30th.
okay, I didn't see, that's in there?
We sunsetted it because at the time it was, when after, the riots and everything was happening, that, people weren't wanting to come into law enforcement. There was a big negative emphasis.
I think we did 1 year and then we extended it for one
Yeah.
more year, and so this would be.
And increased it.
And, okay,
Yep.
yes.
Yes, and we increased it, so, so we're looking at what was going on at that time in the community and in law enforcement across the nation as to what the needs were. So I think that's part of what we've got to continue to make sure we're looking at,
So it would be helpful to send a striked out version of how you want to change the policy too.
I'll do that,
Right.
because I get from you guys.
Okay, but I just would love some more data around how much we've spent, how much is left in the budget. Like we're looking at a tight budget here, so we just really need to look at, it looks like they're just pulling the bonus money right out of what would pay officers or deputies, so.
Unfilled positions.
But as you fill the positions, that you don't, so we just need to, I think, have a little bit more budget analysis to know, can we afford to keep doing the bonuses, and then analysis of the city's new contract and whether or not we need to change the bonuses to adjust.
Okay.
That's what I would have, so agreed.
Under the current, under the current methodology that we would be proposing, we'd be paying $585,000 for the rest of 23, $533,000 for 24, and then $440,000 for 2025. But I will get
Yeah, I don't know what
specific
those numbers
statistics.
mean.
right.
I don't know what
No,
those numbers mean.
That's putting it more in context, and I think working with Ashley to make sure that, again, it's all, kind of
Okay.
works through with the HR. Commissioner Jordan, did you have a,
My question was answered.
okay, thank you. Ashley?
The one other thing I just wanted to point out, commissioners, is in our current policy, it's these large dollar amounts that are sunsetting. So in the policy, for the sheriff's office, there is after 6:30 up to such date still $7,500 available. So it's not like the policy is completely gone, so to speak, or there's no sign-on bonuses. It just goes back to that level that was before we started really bumping it up. So that 7,500 is still available for the deputy groups. And then if we have others that are very difficult to recruit, we could look at it for the non-deputy level. But just wanted to make you guys aware that it's not like this policy completely disappears and there's no more sign-on bonuses for sheriff. And then when we start talking retention, same thing, that language exists in our current policy.
So Delane is, it's essentially 2 weeks. The policy still exists, just at a lower dollar amount for that 2-week period.
Yep, and then if you guys do determine you'd like to approve this, we can always backdate and approve the policy and kind of, if there's offers made in the next couple of weeks, make adjustments, if that's what you determine you would like to do.
Okay, very good, thank you.
All right, anything else?
Thank you, Chris, and you're welcome to stay if you want to listen to the next discussion as well.
Well, good morning.
You'll probably get a recurring theme.
Yeah, we've done this before, so. Well, good morning, Don Hooper, Chief for Detention Services. I think I know most everybody in here. And Ivana Vukicevic, she's our staff assistant in training, and she actually has more experience with this than any of us. So she's kind of one of the ones that brought this up for us and make sure we move forward to the signing bonus. So I have some of the data you were looking for on the detention services side, but I don't really want to waste everybody's time if I think you're going to be looking for the same information for us moving forward. So as long as we hit the 7,500 moving past June 30th, that was kind of the timeline. We have actually 6 new hires starting around August 1st. August 1st. So it gives us a little time, and they're all entry level. None of them are laterals. So that's already in place, and they'll get that. And they've actually already been, promised that, but already been told about that. So they received $37.50 at the beginning, and then another $37.50 at day 365. So we're pretty happy the way it currently works. We haven't had a lot of people jumping out. We currently have had one correction officer before the second half, so they were paid the first half and then ended up leaving prior to the full year. Personal issues, something like that. One lateral, the same thing, and that was when it was at 15,000, so they ended up walking away with 7,500, and then a technical assistant as well prior to finishing out their year, and they ended up with 1,750 to begin with. So smaller amounts, not definitely should be considered, but I think it doesn't really affect us all that much. The people who are jumping and taking off. Biggest thing with us is, as of today, we have 29 corrections officer vacancies, and we've been struggling. We have around 25 for attrition, but we're not hiring 25. So we're continuing to numbers balance between 29, 35. We hire these 6, it'll get us at 23, but we know another 2 or 3 are leaving law enforcement. Ours, a lot of it's not the early retirement. A lot of ours leave within their first 5 years to go to patrol, both city and county. And at any time, we have 5 to 10 being processed for that. So like I said, I don't know what I can add. The conversation about the retention bonus versus that continually comes up with our existing staff, because as we were offering that, I don't know, it's probably not for this conversation either, but the new hires are getting this lump of money. Well, we've been here, and it came up during the pandemic. Initially, was, well, we've been here throughout all this, and they're getting 7,500 or whatever the dollar figure at the time was, and we were getting. And I agree, they got big contracts and everything else, but I do think one of the things that would be well received with our staff, maybe not even retention bonuses, but the longevity pay, contracts that have longevity pay. Like there's some of them, like corrections officers have a 10-year step, getting 10 and 15 and 25-year step, kind of has the same effect. 5% raises at step points, in their career, and thanks for keeping staff around. That experience is hard to match. So I don't know what else questions other than that. This we have not paid out a ton. I mean, what I included here was the amount of overtime we have. We had $3 million in overtime last year. Most of it's corrections officers, and most of it due to vacancies. Most of those 35 vacancies we had, Those positions are all being filled with overtime and a lot of it being mandatory overtime. And so those are the things, and that mandatory overtime does drive some of the staff away. They're just like, yeah, we know of at least some go to law enforcement or go and move on to other careers because the mandatory overtime is overwhelming. So around 8 hours a week for every corrections officer they would consider. So most of them are doing about 48 hours a week. So the dollar figures are there. That's $3 million, and we've only paid out. It looks like in
This is proposal.
proposal 2,000 up to this year, up to date, we've paid 80,000 out, and last year we only paid 138 out. So we're not paying a huge dollar figure. We can easily offset it with overtime, but I know that was part of the conversation, so. Yes,
Is the 1.1 million, that's 2023 overtime to date?
year to date, correct. We have had a reduction. We've moved to 12-hour shifts from most of the positions, and it has had a reduction. This summer's ramping back up, summer's maximum overtime, maximum vacancies, but it still looks like we'll be under 3 million. We're at this point halfway. I think that was through May, I believe, not June. So we don't have June.
So Ashley,
Just one thing for this group and looking at each differently. We do have a very difficult time recruiting for detention, even just getting them to come test. So both groups definitely have their recruiting issues, but in this room right now, sorry, Chris, but detention, we are struggling to even get people to sign up and come in for a test, let alone make it through the full process. And I know we've always kind of had that with Sheriff's Office as well, but I think we're at more of a crippling rate right now with detention, which we've talked about even in prior years, which is what prompted the conversation of do we need to look at a higher sign-on bonus potentially for detention for laterals, which is what you'll see in your 2023 proposal for detention. But that's what prompted that conversation, is knowing that we're spending $3 million on overtime last year. We're quickly hitting 1.5 right now. We cannot get people to come test. We've also been working with them, and they're doing a great job on like, how do we change the recruiting, the time to get people into a position? But at a certain point, you know, there's only so many more stones to flip over, and with detention, we're about hitting that wall. So that's part of the conversation of looking at detention is, do we need to do something differently, recognizing that we can't even get people to sign up for the tests right now at a pace that's even a third of what it was 3 years ago.
Thank you, Ashley. Actually, we have 26 people signed up for a July test, second week in July.
July 12th and
July.
July 15th.
For 29 vacancies, and clearly we'll have about a third no-show, probably just sign up for the test but don't show, and then you'll have another 20% that can't pass the physical ability test and some written. But before we've done a polygraph or a psych or anything else, we won't have nearly the numbers we have.
And that's out of about 65 applications that we received. So out of 65, only 26 people responded saying they're going to show up.
so across the state, I'm hearing the same thing, and then the other piece that I'm hearing, I mean, it's like, I know one county put on a reader board just on the highway.
Sure.
You know, asking for, you know, corrections officers, you know, sign up, you know, literally. So I know people have been trying to be as creative as possible, but this is, you know, a statewide, probably nationwide problem. I don't know, maybe nationally, but I think, you know, it's yeah, how do we get there, and how do we do that? And I don't know. I know one of the things that has been talked about across the state is, part of it is once you get them to come in and take the test and they pass that, and then they realize they've got to go across the state for 3 months for training and not be home. That's, you know, a deterrent, because they may not have childcare, they may not have the ability to do that and leave their family. So, you know, it's really talking to the state to say, we have to have these training facilities on the east side so people aren't having to leave their families for 3 months to go to the training. And then it's the continual training each year too that has to, you know, they have to get. So I don't know if
Director Sparber and I met with, it was a conference call, same thing, and they were not open to it. The commission has not been open to having academies over here that they had been in the past. It was probably about a year ago we met with it. So definitely something to readdress, but they were not open to corrections academies on this side of the state. They
I
wanted
think on the law enforcement side, they're starting to. Right. But I don't know why they're not for detention services. But I know that's, I mean, I think that's something we all have to elevate to the legislature because it's so important. Because that's, I mean, I'm, even in private industry, when someone, over in Spokane gets a job and they've got to go to Seattle for training, that a lot of times I know, my sister was just telling me a situation with a friend of hers that she didn't take the job because she couldn't go over to leave her kids for the training. And so I think, we have to understand that not all these people have, spouses, but they have families and they can't just leave to do that. So I think we've got to start to elevate that how best we can.
Madam Chair, and also how many academies they have a year, Donna, like,
Through doing them every 4 months.
okay.
So there's only 3 academies for corrections officer a year, and it's a limited number. Our group that's starting in August is probably not gonna go to the academy until June of next year.
So then they can't
Which
be
it
in.
used to be a requirement, but in for 6 months to go to the academy, they're gonna be way past that 6 months.
Commissioner Jordan.
Do you guys look at, counties like Pierce and Snohomish and King and whether they're, I assume, having the same problem?
I did,
what
and
the
I
numbers
didn't,
are?
I didn't include this in this, I've got a spreadsheet that we made up in-house, just kind of everybody else's signing bonuses, what other incentives, shift differential, those kind of things, vacation in the beginning. I'll give it to Ashley, actually. It's really rough. It's just a spreadsheet we put together, just mainly from phone calls for all the other agencies, but we have. And a lot of agencies don't have anything, and a lot of them have $15,000 and $25,000 signing bonuses. So it's kind of all over the board, even for our comps, even the same size
Do
agencies.
you look at their vacancy numbers as well?
Have that as
That's
well.
on there?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'll give that to Ashley and the same thing to Sheriff, but it's the same thing, every agency, not just in Washington, everybody's, dealing with the same issues. And I also feel that they're our competition. We just heard the same thing. We hear that Pierce County, one of our comps, for laterals, Washington, they're moving out of somewhere else. And they're just looking, one, getting 25,000 day one. That's probably, our laterals kind of dried up after the signing bonus in December went from 10,000 to 7,500 for laterals for us. So it's all 7,500 across the board, and lateral applicants have kind of dried up. I don't know if that's the whole reason, other salaries throughout the state as well, so. But I'll give that to Ashley.
Madam Chair,
I'll send you the
Uh,
electronic version
second,
as well.
Commissioner.
It's pretty rough.
Second, Commissioner French is next. I'm trying to watch everybody, so,
Fingers are going up.
yes.
So, just a question for Chris, and it deals with the sex offender program. Last spring, there was a lot of conversation at LSC for Wasac about the state changing its program with regard to release of sex offenders, where they were, the fear was they were shortening up sentences, and releasing more offenders back into the communities. And the assumption was that it was more of the communities outside of where the sex offender was actually caught and prosecuted at. And so have you, in your numbers, seen an increase in the number of offenders that we are seeing in Spokane County being released and coming back here that didn't originate here in Spokane County?
So Commissioner, I don't have the statistics for where they would have originated prior to, but the numbers have gone up, and I can get you that information if you'd like.
That would be very helpful, because that was a concern for counties across the state, was a program initiated by the state to remove the state's financial burden, but it transferred that burden on to counties in terms of monitoring and detention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with the commissioners and then I'll go to
Sure.
Mike and Ashley. Okay, Commissioner Walker.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I did appreciate your spreadsheet. It's very well done. And just adding those other comparables would be great. So
Oh,
thank
great.
you for providing that
Oh, you're
good
welcome.
data
You're absolutely
and
welcome.
the numbers, so.
Thanks so much.
I'm looking over here because I wonder if someone had something to do with it over here, so
Yes.
thank you. It was very, I
Absolutely.
appreciate that kind of, and it would be interesting to also see overtime numbers for last year and this year for the sheriff's office, just since I'm a new commissioner, I'm not, my
Also,
first budget year, so,
okay.
thank you.
This might be a little ambitious, but I think something that'd be really helpful to see is going back 5 years. Seeing the number of funded positions mapped out, and then the number of actually filled over time, so we could see clearly, on like a line graph, here's when certain events happened, and you could kind of decide whether those impacted or not. The other thing that would be really interesting to me going back a few years is to see the overtime on an annual basis. So I know we're asking for a lot of data, but I think that would really help me see the trends and kind of see the big picture.
I think for 5 years, that's the overtime in the rules that used to be around $2 million was the overtime, and it's up in $3.5 million. So it's definitely keep creeping up. And
So I'm gonna go to Ashley and then Mike and
Oh, I don't have anything.
Okay.
Yep.
then, okay.
I'm just gonna say, Chief Hooper's been working with HR on looking at 18-year-olds. If we were able to hire those as well, that would buy 3 years before they move on to it. And we've talked about this, several times before, so I just want to let you know that that's also a strategy they're working on as well.
we've tried to be at every recruiting event, partnering with HR, every recruiting event or anything we consider even a recruiting event or a community event, from bighorn shows to just about everything we can be at. We've been maybe 20 this year so far.
We've been to at least 20 this
Yeah.
year, yes.
So everything we can do, put a table up and hand out job applications, we're doing it, so.
Yeah, no, I know you guys, it's tough, so thank you for hanging in there with us on that, because I know, it's, like I said, across the state, I'm hearing it from everyone. And so I do think that we've got to figure out the academy side of it, because I think that's, it'd be interesting if you see that as a deterrent as well.
Well, once we get them to the door, so often that they haven't even learned that from us, that we don't even get them to the door. I think there's just so many opportunities out there that a lot of them are going to law enforcement, even though there's still a lot of vacancies there. Seemingly for a lot of people in the door, that's probably a more desirable job role. A lot of times they use this as a stepping stone, which we're seeing as well. And so I don't know if they even know about the academy at this point, and they may well. It doesn't seem like it's driving out the door because the same applicants are going to law enforcement. That's a 20-week academy versus a 10. So I'm not saying they don't. It seems like a lot of them, same thing. There's just so many other opportunities. They're not even showing up.
Well, and it used to be where there wasn't the vacancies in law enforcement, so they were in correction services, as that stepping stone. And, and then would go over as vacancies would open up. But since there's all these vacancies, they can just jump right over. So yeah, it used to be the feeder organization, and it's not anymore.
Yeah. So, well, I think it still is.
But it still is. But I mean, but they can just go straight to law enforcement now.
Yep.
And not have to
They don't
go
need to
into
take that step.
So yeah. So. Okay, sorry that we have lots of questions.
No, we'll get more
but-
information for you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Kyle, you're gonna be up next. Where would you like me? Right here? Maybe. We'll let you move down. Okay. There we go.
This was really good.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have a slate of things to brief you this morning. Starting off with a very fun one here, because Jamie Hayes, our grants team, is going to tell you a little bit about the award we got for Craig Road.
Good morning, everybody, commissioners. My name is Jamie Hayes. I'm the Senior Project Manager for the Public Works Department here at Spokane County. My primary roles and responsibilities are obtaining grant funding, grant management, and transportation planning. And I'm here to talk about a $3 million award we just received. I don't know how or who's going to advance the slides. Thank you. And I should have brought my glasses. I knew it. So in spring of this year, 2023, the Public Works Department applied for a grant to revise access at Interstate 90 to improve access and connectivity to Craig Road. This is a federally earmarked award through the House Transportation budget. We requested $5 million and we received $3 million. So the long-term goal of this project is a corridor reconstruction project with improved access to Interstate 90. To do so, we need an access revision report. We'll be working hand in hand with WashDOT and FHWA for final approval on this. Part of the access revision report includes an alternatives and non-access feasibility study that is included in the access revision report. Interchange access revision reports includes some preliminary engineering and partial environmental review for the interchange revision to be accepted. Upon approval of the access revision report, preliminary engineering can commence, right-of-way can be acquired, and then we can pursue more funding to complete the corridor to realize the full corridor construction. You may wonder why this is an important project. Well, it's important because it supports the entire connectivity and access to the West Plains. It provides access to Fairchild Air Force Base and to the airmen that are not living on base, supplies access to Airway Heights, Spokane International Airport, US 2, Scenic Route 902, 904, the city of Spokane, Spokane County. Also provides access to the people and the commercial businesses south of the interstate. This is a globally recognized area for manufacturing and industry. It's the 5th largest aerospace industry cluster in the United States. It's the 2nd largest airport in Washington State, and Class 1 railroad carriers are also available in this area. You can see how this could be very profitable and support economic development in this area. It supports future and existing commercial, industrial, and residential that is in this area. It provides redundancy. Redundancy is important because we know that there's a lot of congestion in this area, whether it's on US 2, Interstate 90, Hayford, SR 902. And it's even more important when we have inclement winter weather and there's car accidents. It provides people ways to get to their desired destinations without being kind of bottlenecked. And then it's also should be noted that there's an 8-mile gap in between interchanges. And what this does is it causes unnecessary driving to get to someone's desired destination. It promotes, so with something like this, it would reduce vehicle miles traveled, vehicle hours traveled, and also reduce congestion. This is project phase 1 of a 6 to complete the access revision report using a consultant, and which would result in a complete report guided by Chapter 550 of Washington State Department of Transportation, and then finally approved by the Federal Highway Administration. Phase 2 is to complete the environmental permitting required and obtain that approval and signature from FHWA. Phase 1 and 2 could reasonably be completed by fall of September, or fall-ish, I shouldn't say September, of 2024 if we have no setbacks. This is a tentative schedule. What you see in blue is the time allocated to be the access revision report to be approved. And the green is the time required for the environmental permitting to take place. The purple is preliminary engineering and design, and the yellow is the time needed for right-of-way acquisition. The black box at the end is when we would basically be able to obligate construction fundings to initiate this project. I wanted to provide you with some kind of conceptual design. This is not FHWA approved. So what you see here is access over the interstate. You see 2 roundabouts, north and south, and what these essentially do is they provide access north, south, east, and west, where there has never been access, and this is around the 4 Lakes area. The slide on my left, you can kind of see the yellow line going up, and this is a really hard slide to see, but this is like the 30,000-foot view of this project of just phase 1. You see the roundabouts, and then you would head north, travel a little bit west on White Road to have full connectivity to Craig Road. Next slide, please. Thank you. Commissioner French.
Yeah, so the property that we're going to be crossing on this is currently owned in conjunction, well, part of it's with Highline, part of it's with Louisiana Pacific. This parcel to the north there is the 80 acres that Louisiana Pacific has purchased for their manufacturing facility. I have had recent conversations with Highline, and they would like us to consider, instead of going east, using White Road, go ahead and coming further down and dividing the property between LP and theirs. It makes for less construction on our
That's even better,
project.
yeah.
And they would be willing to work with us in terms of, providing some right of way and stuff like that. So
Excellent.
that was a conversation I had the week before last and had a chance to update Kyle and stuff on that, but
We'll definitely
that-
pursue
that's-
that.
Yeah, that's an opportunity for them.
That's a great opportunity.
Also, there's another $4.5 million in the pipeline to actually do the construction. And I met with Federal Highways here about a month ago on that. And so there's more money coming.
Great, yeah,
and
that's
stuff.
always good news when we have more
Yeah.
money coming. But I mean, and like I said, this is just conceptual. I just
Yeah.
wanted to provide you with something so you can kind of wrap your mind around what this phase may look like. And this is, there's a lot of room for this to change, but just some kind of idea for you. Thank you for that comment, I appreciate it. And so this is, it's a little bit hard to see and I apologize for that, but this is the 6 phases that I was speaking about. That little tiny blip of pink at the bottom is this phase 1. The dashed dotted lines in the middle are an intersection realignment that we're currently working on to be completed in probably spring of 2024. And then the remaining colored blocks would be the phases that we would need to accomplish to have a complete corridor reconstruction.
The other thing that's in the pipeline, we met 3 weeks ago with Fairchild Air Force Base, and they're gonna have in their next MILCON ask to improve Thorpe Road from Craig Road to their new gate.
Oh,
So
great.
there's a second gate that Fairchild will have at Thorpe Road that will try and take all of this traffic from the south, Medical Lake, Cheney, West Terrace, and be able to take them into the second gate and relieve traffic off of Highway 2 and relieve some of that traffic trying to go through the main gate because there's just too much congestion and stuff. So that that's a high priority for the Air Force. So they're fully expecting that that's going to get funded in the next MILCON allocation.
I hope so, yeah, we
so-
just submitted the DCIP for that project on
Yeah.
Friday as well.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
And then this is just kind of shows you the phase 1 and the sub phases. With phase 1, what we're trying to accomplish is to get that access revision report drafted. Phase 2 is to get that environmental done, and with final approval from FHWA. And then if there's any remaining funds, it will be obligated towards design and preliminary engineering. And then this is just the existing conditions. And I wanted to show you this just because I wanted to show you that Craig Road basically bisects the city of Airway Heights, the city of Spokane, the International Airport, Fairchild Air Force Base, Medical Lake, and then Cheney is basically directly south of this. So with that, does anyone have any questions or comments, concerns about this project?
No concerns other than, I apologize,
No,
been
I
traveling,
love
I
it.
haven't had a chance to update. We met week before last with SRTC and about getting this on the comp plan and the priority list for SRTC so that we've got the 2 projects harmonized together so that it helps us with the FHWA.
Yeah, I've been working with SRTC too as
Okay.
well on this project, and there, I was gonna leave that part out because what we have lined up is basically it needs to be on their metropolitan
Yeah.
transportation plan.
Right.
And with the time allocated for this, we're gonna be doing that, working in conjunction with them for a successful project.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's like you've been working really hard on this.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. I do try very hard, yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll see the award acceptance coming up next week or on the 11th.
Yeah, I emailed Heather about drafting a resolution for this as soon as possible.
Okay, and then probably the next action item you'll see will be our consultant for helping us with that ARR.
Absolutely, working on the RFQ for that now as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Yes, you don't need to stay. Okay.
Goodbye, everybody, thank you.
Okay, so I've got Monty here too. We had, we're going to brief this last week, but Monty got sick last week. So sorry for the It's maybe the worst title of a briefing we've ever given you guys, but that's because it's a really kind of silly thing we have to do.
That hurts a little, Kyle.
I'm sorry, Bonnie, but you take it away.
I will take it away. So the use of county forces for road construction is what we're talking about. I got my overview / definitions here. So road construction are the capital road construction projects that are in our annual construction program. County forces is the road maintenance crew, Andy's team that takes care of our roads. To be more specific, the construction we're talking about is the actual construction activity on the road itself. It does not include the design, the right-of-way acquisition, or our construction inspectors, just the work on the road. You probably know, but nearly all of our road construction projects are competitively bid to private contractors. But there are some, they are typically small projects or some parts of larger projects where our crews can do a great job for less money. So we sometimes bring those forward for the county engineer will bring those to the board for approval. So the work that we do for this is covered by state law. We have to follow the instructions that were given for it. So I got some code snippets here for those who like to see it. The first part is just that the board can choose to do this. This is something the board can allow. The second part is that we have to print it in the newspaper ahead of time, a description of the work, how much it's going to cost. And then when we're done, we have to print how much did it actually cost. So both of those publications go in the newspaper. So the resolutions that you have seen, you've had 3 so far this year for this, have all those elements in there. The approval of the board, the work described, the cost estimates, and then the indication that we're going to publish all of that. That's all in those resolutions that you've received. And then there's one more element to it. Wow, the slides are rolling perfectly here. There is limits on how much of the work that we can do with county forces. It is defined here for you. We are in the top tier in terms of population, so we have the 3,250,000 and then some calculation that I'm hoping you don't really want me to explain that adds a little bit more onto that. So the County Road Administration Board, CRAB, is our oversight on this, and they provide the limits to all the counties the year prior, so you know what it's going to be for the upcoming year. So I just wanted to add on that the limit of my slides, but just to fill out the full picture, in the fall, we will bring you the annual construction program for your review and approval. On that program, it does indicate which projects we're intending to use county forces, so that information is on there. Your approval of the program is not actually approval of those county forces. It takes a specific resolution the next year. And then in April of the year following our work, we report to CRAB the actual costs of all of this and our publication dates where we published it in the paper. All that's reported to CRAB, and that's part of our certificate of good practice.
Thank you for explaining all of that, Mark.
So excited.
You know it, right? You get to follow Jamie with this great project he's got going. That's fun.
So as the commissioners, some of them have seen it before, some haven't. As you see resolutions come forward that say use of county forces, this is the background for it and the whys and wherefores and the need for the board to weigh in on Kyle's team to be able to do designate Andy's team to be able to do the work.
And this is not what they're out there doing every day like this week, where we got our overlay crews out there, we chip seal out there. Those are maintenance activities. Those are not capital. So this is truly when the work is classified as capital, which of course we get to decide. But so for instance, I think the last one they did was a portion of a bid project that was just paving back the approaches.
It's actually removing it. So we got rid of a
Removing
bridge,
it.
and then we removed the roadway leading up to the bridge. So our crews did that road removal. There's a bridge one that you just approved for us to replace the bridge. I think it's like a modular thing that drops in. There's other ones where, our chip seal crew maybe does part of a project. And I will follow up with what Scott was saying. We're not planning on individually briefing these as they come forward. If you do want more information when they roll through, we can do that. But it just comes at the overview, might cover it, or you can not.
So we've had 50,000 foot conversations at CRAB about whether we ought to raise this limit or not. And so from your perspective, would it be helpful if the limit was raised or not? In terms of how much you can use county resources with?
You know, our biggest projects that we've done since I've been here have been those modular bridges. But they're bid out separately, you know, so the bridge being prefab is actually bid, and it's just us putting in place. I'd have to really check with Mike Duke, but I don't think we've come close to that limit. I mean, that would really be pushing our workforce to get their maintenance done and this stuff. But our crews like doing it, you know, you throw in something new every once in a while, and it really gives them, you know, something to hone their skills and try something new.
Again, I guess in my opinion, I would love it if we were in a position to be bumping up against that limit. But with the resources that we have and the amount of work we have, I don't know that we've been anywhere near.
Okay, all right, thanks, that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything else, sorry, on the county forces? Okay, couple of fun ones. Today, I'm actually pretty excited to share this project here. Andy and Becca are gonna lead us through a discussion about, this is our scrub seal first, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, this is very interesting. You may have gotten some inquiries about this. And in essence, scrub seal is a newer form or newer application of an old process, chip sealing, but has some interesting benefits, so.
So Becca is the brains behind this. I'm the face, so she knows this inside and out. But so last year we did 2 trial areas on scrub seal, and again, it's basically a chip seal, but with different oils. And with those different oils, we can do different classifications of roadway. And so last year we tried it. We didn't schedule any this year because we really wanted to see how it performed. And from what we've seen, it's actually performed very well. And the whole idea is to save money and staff time on it because you don't need to do as much prep work. You don't need to do the crack sealing and other stuff ahead of time to use this. And I'm going to call it a chip seal. I'm going to call it a scrub seal because at the end of the day, they look the same. The big difference is the oils, and you can look it up. There's smarter people out there, but we're using a PMRE oil versus our CRS-2P oil. And the big difference is, so for our normal chip seal, we use the CRS-2P, and it has 2.5% of it is latex. This PMRE has 7% latex, so almost 3 times as much. It's sticky, it's slimy to work with, but that's where the benefit's coming, is it really can fill those wide cracks and that alligatoring and handle their temperature ranges and stuff like that. So if we go to the next slide, the big thing here is if you look at that chart on the left, is that on a poor condition road, the average shows that we can get 10 plus years out of this process. If you compare it to our normal where we crack seal and chip seal, that's under a good road, we get 10 plus years. And the ranges, you know, we rate our roads from 0 to 100 with a PSC. And so a poor road is between like a 40 and a 59. A good road is between a 75 and an 84. So we can go down to these in the past, which we really didn't have good solutions on, and now we have a solution that looks like it's viable. And typically you can see the cost right there, square yard costs. A chip seal is about $2.10 a square yard. This is about $3 a square yard. I think, and that's our numbers now. The oil distributor is giving us some deals on the equipment to put it down, so I think we'll see that cost go up a little bit, but the benefit is still huge on the backside. So next slide. Thanks, Ron. Here's the 2 neighborhoods that we did last year, and the lower neighborhood, which is there just north of Francis and east of the new freeway. Why we picked it is we also had a chip seal penetration road project in there that was funded by Clean Air. So since the crew was there, we just did this neighborhood, and then we wanted to try another neighborhood, and that's like north of Stoneman, south of Peone, and east of Market there. Good success. We did a total of 8.34 lane miles, but we did Commissioner Kearns, I know his office got some complaints about it. But similar to the complaints we got when we started doing chip seal in the city, when you're going from a paved road to a chip seal road, it's a little rough. It takes us about a year to really get it all cleaned up and stuff, so you get some complaints. But the benefit way outweighs the complaints. The next one is some pictures. So where these 3 pictures is really why we use this product. In the past, we would have had to try to find something. The picture on the left has those wide cracks, and we would have had to try to come out and do some asphalt patching or something because crack seal doesn't work well in those. And so what we had to do, the only difference on this is after you did the oil, you had to come by and hand shuffle extra rock in those wide cracks. You still feel them. Remember, chip seal is just the topping. It doesn't take out any of the imperfections, but it protects that road. Hopefully gives us another 15 to 20 year life on it, keeps that moisture out of the road. The middle one, you can see if you look close, it's really alligatored in there, and we would have probably had to bring a paving crew in and tried to overlay that before we chip sealed on top of it, or it would just come through. And then the one on the right is just typical cracking that we didn't even have to crack seal. So, and if you look at the picture on the left, it's got that scrub broom trailer behind it. And so the distributor truck puts down the oil, and then each of those brooms is pulling a wave of material that's probably a couple inches deep. And that's why it's kind of messy, is because you got this really sticky stuff. The contractor or the oil supplier, that was a trailer that followed like a normal trailer. They're working on a device now that actually is hydraulically attached to the truck, so they can just set it down. When they get to the end, they can pick it up. Their guy that was scrubbing this in at the beginning and end, his shoes at the end of the day were probably like that thick with asphalt, and throw it away. And he bought rubber boots the next day that use once and toss it out. But again, that's that latex. So if we go to the next picture, this is the final product. And Becca, in the middle picture, you can see this was one of those wide cracks. You can still see it. If you drive over it, you can still feel it, but it is not, before it was probably a good inch deep and probably 4 inches wide, 3 to 4 inches wide. And so the left looks great. That's a huge success for us. The middle picture is great, huge success. Here's where we had a few issues. It was at the beginning and the end. We had some rock loss because it was just getting that oil wave in front of those scrub brooms down. So again, I think with a machine that might set down instead of pull behind, and then you got to really make sure you get those brushes filled with oil before you start. And I think you're always going to see a little bit at the beginning and the ends of the poles, a little bit of rock loss, but the oil's still there, so the cracks are sealed. It just doesn't look as good, and you see that a lot of the beginning and ends this last year. And the contractor learned a lot, and we learned a lot there. So next slide, just kind of did some pros and cons. Pros, economically, we don't have to do the prep work and stuff like that. What we're seeing, again, we're cautious, but it looks like it's going to last a lot longer. They're looking at that new machine to put it down with versus the trailer, and it all looks like a chip seal when we're done. And that's really our main preservation product, is a chip seal. So it basically looks like everything else we do. The cons to it is super messy. Yeah, extremely messy. I think if we did it with our crews and they were out there, we'd probably have to invest in a few pairs of boots that you just throw away and some coveralls and stuff like that. We do end up with some excess rock that we have to put on the wide cracks, so it's a little more labor intensive. Special care on the radiuses, like we pointed out, where it lost some rock. We got to make sure we get the right amount of oil down there. Sweeping took us longer. In a residential area, it really wasn't until this good spring cleaning that it really looked nice, just because the rock loss and stuff like that. But it's not a huge negative thing. It's just something we got to learn, that we're going to have to sweep it a little bit more. And then the con is one of the two neighborhoods really complained that, they had their nice smooth paved road. Now their kids can't rollerblade in it. They say their dogs can't walk on it. Their horses can't walk on it. And I try to explain to them that, it's a cost benefit. We're trying to preserve as much of our roadway network as we can. This is a great tool. And really, right now, it is no different than most of our chip seal roads, and it's a little different than the city. The city uses a quarter inch chip minus, we use a 3/8. But, you know, there's really not much roughness difference either, so.
And I think one of the things here is, to get a little bit into the weeds, is one of the really important components of this is when you look at those streets, those before pictures that have that alligatoring, that PCI down in the 30s, 40s, 50s, you cannot actually do an asphalt overlay on it. That's not an actually effective tool because all that will just come right through. If we really truly wanted to return these streets to a higher condition, we would have to remove the road entirely. We would have to pulverize the road and start from scratch, which is just economically infeasible for a residential road. For local access, the fact that we were able to get 8 miles down for the cost that we expended upon this, I'm so excited. I mean, in all the years that I've been doing this at the city and here, I mean, this is a really cool tool. Alligator roads are, when you're literally just waiting for them to turn back to dirt. I mean, there's just no tools available. And the fact that we didn't have to even have our crack seal crew go out there, it's an incredible change. And I mean, that was always this question when we were looking at pavement maintenance, is trying to keep our good streets good, and there's just nothing to do with those lower PCI streets. This is the first thing I've seen in the industry that actually can address it.
And I want to thank Becca. She's one that, you know, she's part of the Northwest Pavement Management Association. They've talked to that. Our oil contractor talked to them a lot about it, and we decided that, yeah, this is a good one to try it on. And it cautious, we didn't schedule any this year, but I think it was a good product. So thank you for bringing that to the county.
Yeah, CRAB is now trying to get more and more counties to move to chip sealing and stuff to preserve their road systems. And TIP, we just started a program to where we fund this application inside the smaller cities and stuff. So it's kudos for being out in the leadership role on this thing. It's a good program.
One of the things, Kyle, you had told me that, you know, over the span of about a year and the more traffic that goes on, it'll sort of smooth out the roughness over time. Right?
So those chips are, you know, when they're first applied, they're really kind of sitting on the surface. You roll them in as best you can. And this is also a difference between doing residential streets and arterial streets. In arterial streets, when you get 10,000 cars going and heavy trucks going down it, that smashing process, for lack of better terms, happens quicker. It takes a little bit longer on the residentials, but they will, the surface will get smoother as it ages.
And is this a new technology? Like, is this something that wasn't around 5-10 years ago, or is?
So the scrub seal, the oil is a newer, they're always trying different oils. So it's the oil in the process.
Yeah, they've come a long way with the asphalt. Scrub seals have been around for a long time.
Okay.
We haven't done it, probably because we didn't have an asphalt supplier that had the broom. Usually you get that from the supplier.
All right.
You know, and I've had some people call from California about other, you know, why don't we use rubberized overlays and stuff like that? A little bit is tied to your area. What does your local providers provide you for tools to use? And there's a whole science into all this oil, you know, what works up here where we have the cold winters and the hot summers versus, you know, something that's maybe warm or hot all year long and then gets hotter like California. So you can't use a product that's not supported by the suppliers.
So this is very near and dear to me. It speaks to some of the past work I did at the city of Spokane. And I love the fact that the team is continuing to look at new tools to help us maintain our road network, and particularly those that, as Kyle mentioned, generally are in the below good or fair condition. We don't have a good investment tool in our residential areas. What's the cost, Andy? Like, if you compare this, a lot of numbers being thrown at you today, but chip seals $210 a square yard. What would a grinder and overlay cost? 10x?
So usually if a grind and overlay, we usually contract that out, and it's probably about $800,000 or $900,000 a mile right now.
Yeah, so I mean,
And chip seal is,
the magnitude difference between these are dramatic. And so being able to bring another tool in the toolbox to be able to get at those roads that we're not gonna be able to justify going in and doing a grind and overlay on a residential road. We're not. We do those regularly on our local arterials and whatnot, but not on a residential. So this being able to come in, skipping the upfront crack sealing, which is a year before, possibly, then you come in and do this stuff and do a combined. And the other piece that is really magnified to me is typically, I don't think we do chip seals unless the road is in a 70 or above kind of grading condition. And now we're able to go a lot deeper in and get a pretty good product. So big hats off to the team. I get it, it's not a smooth surface. And in the local and the residentials, parents with their kids want their kids to be able to go out and ride on the road, and you have to be on the sidewalk sometimes until it's smoothed back down. But it is a tool, and it's an important tool for us to have. So I think it's really, really cool.
So just to add to that, Becca gave me the numbers preparing for this. So if we just crack seal, you're talking about $2,300 a lane mile, center line mile. Chip seal, you're looking at about 32, and that includes the crack seal from before. Scrub, you're looking at about 45,000 center line mile. If you get to the grind and overlay, we kind of estimated about that $1 million mile. So this cheaper, which I think are good solutions, is the best way for us to go.
Gets a lot more done for significantly less cost.
And then if you go to complete over reconstruct, you're looking at $1.8 million a mile. So, any questions on that? Great.
I mean, when I was at the city with Andy and Scott, we started doing the chip sealing, and residents, at the beginning, there's a lot of chips out there, it's not, but over time it smooths out. And I mean, it costs so much less, and you could do so many more roads and keep them from, deteriorating. So it's really, I appreciate you guys trying new things, because we gotta have lots of tools. There's a lot of lane miles out there, and we gotta have lots of different tools that are affordable. So, thank you.
Any questions on this, or can we move on to the next one?
I think you're good to go to the next one.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody's favorite. Sharon Road.
Yeah.
You want me to start?
I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
So, again, I'm letting the whole board know, because I figure that the calls will go in multiple different directions. This is in Commissioner Cooney's area. So what's highlighted there is Sharon Road, and what we didn't highlight was Stevens Creek. So basically, back in 2012, the neighborhood approached us that they were tired of the condition of the road. And up Stevens Creek, we do have a trailhead that is I call it an outside attractor. It's not caused by the neighbors per se. And so back in the day, we worked with the neighborhood. They chipped in some money. The school district chipped in some money, and the Parks Department chipped in some money. And we combined these two projects, and we did. This happened before me. I'm going to call it a heavy dust oil. We went in. We said we're going to try this experimental oil. It'll give you hopefully a better driving surface, but we don't know how long it's going to last. It's not an RID. We weren't creating a paved road or a BST road. So we did some of the prep work in 12, and we did the heavy dust oil in 13. And if we go to the next slide, Ron, just some history. I'm not going to read it all to you, but yeah, we started in 12 and 13. It was a public-private partnership, and the citizens did kick in about $60,000, a little more than $60,000. And we told them at the time we didn't know how long this is going to last. And there's the cost breakdown. You can see what the school did. And there was a resolution signed by the board at that time for us to accept public funds for or private funds for a public project. And so the outcomes, if we go to the next slide, so basically we completed the hard service in 2013, and on Stevens Creek by 14, we were already starting to get calls and complaints on it. And from our records in Sharon Road, we got them in 16 instead of 14. And really one thing that I wanted to hit on is that the ADT from 2017, Sharon Road had 160 ADT, average vehicles per day. Stevens Creek had 460 almost vehicles per day. So we're talking magnitudes of traffic. So that's why Sharon Road has lasted as long as it had. And last few years, we've been kind of fighting Sharon Road just a little bit. I've had some neighbors call me and say, hey, you told us that this was a gravel road, and when it basically reached its useful life, you would blade it up and do it. And then I've had other people call me and say, hey, I bought on a paved road, how come you're not paving it? So I've tried to explain all this to them, and there were several meetings and everything was told that this was experimental. So essentially, this is what we have out there right now. We have some potholing, we have some big areas that have come off. In the right picture, you can see we tried to do some probably cold mix there because we said no hot mix, but there really isn't. You can see that's less than an inch. So there's nothing for the pavement to attach to. It's a gravel road. So we've come to where we're gonna take it and pulverize it like we did to Stevens Creek and turn it back to a gravel road this year. I imagine at least Commissioner Cooney will get lots of calls, but the rest of you might hear about it also.
So have you had discussions with the community out there?
Not a community meeting. I've had discussions with ones that have called and had specific concerns.
I would suggest, I mean, I was at, we did, I had to talk to Chad, I mean, Chad and I did several community meetings out there. One of the gentlemen is, one of the ranchers on Sharon. I can't think of his name.
Owens.
Yeah. I mean, I would just, because what we didn't do on Stevens Creek when we did it, we didn't give any notice.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't, and so, I mean, the uproar was huge. So yes, we've been talking about this for, since I've been commissioner. And we knew Sharon eventually was gonna happen, but I think it's better for us to be proactive and give them that information that it's gonna be happening and when it's gonna be happening.
So we were gonna send out letters to all of them along it, but would you like us to have more of a community meeting, and would you like to be involved, or, I'm looking for suggestions. We'll do whatever. I just didn't know the right way on this one. Mr. Owens has passed away. His son has taken, or his nephew or grandkid has taken over the farm out there.
Okay.
So we kind of lost that good point of contact who was the community contact over the years.
Yeah, because he really was the one.
He was kind of the glue of the neighborhood. So when he passed last year or the year before, I kind of lost that good connection to the neighborhood.
Okay. I would say let's talk about it.
Okay.
Just partly it then stops if, when I was at the meetings, then it stops all the rest of it because then it's like they know that this is where we're at, you're there, I'm there.
Okay. No, and I totally agree
it was
with that.
helpful that way when we had those community meetings.
Okay.
Because otherwise, then they're just like constantly calling and getting mad and everybody's calling, and so it's just better to say having a community meeting and letting people know that this is where we're at. We did it with Stevens Creek. Stevens Creek, then we did, that was one of the tests for the.
So that was a gravel road stabilization
Yes.
test, and I think that's been very successful. We still get some complaints on it, but I believe overall it's been successful. The traffic volumes, again, Sharon doesn't warrant what we've done on those gravel road stabilizations. We've been looking at over 250. The but really the high ones, the 400 plus is what we've concentrated on.
No, and Stevens Creek definitely with the trailhead and all of that, was that, but, yeah, people are not gonna be happy.
There's different counts and.
How many people live in that?
So Kyle asked about our counts with COVID. We've really had some weird stuff going on with counts. So I quoted you guys the ones from 2017 because we had it on both roads, but we did have some more recent counts, and some of them were up as 700 on Stevens Creek, but then some of them been low as like 300. So it might be the time of year, it could be COVID. There's just been this time frame that our traffic counts, there's an anomaly, and I don't know why yet.
With Stevens.
With Stevens Creek, yeah.
I think it's, it's a lot of, was it higher during COVID?
It was higher like 19, and then in 22 it was lower. So again, I don't know.
Yeah, people were kind of getting out.
It could be time of year, it could be a lot of stuff.
And in 19, I think, was when we were getting the cameras installed and all of that too, so people could see what the trailheads were, as we're getting Glenrose online too as a secondary trailhead. So there was a lot of reasons for that, but yeah, it was definitely have conversations with me. I know a lot about it.
And Matt said that you were really involved, so.
Yes, because if I'm not involved on the front end, I will be involved on the back end, so it's better just to be honest with them and explain it.
So we'll modify our moving forward. We will schedule a meeting probably after the 4th of July, mid-July. We'll be there together, and then we'll bump this work to August. That's not a huge issue for us. So it's just one of those things. I kind of wanted Chad to make the call before he left, because I know he was really, see, we can still blame people that are gone. But he was really involved with this neighborhood along with you, and so we were cautious. We wanted the road to last as long as it could, but it's at a time now. So any other questions on that one?
And Commissioner Kern was asking, how many people live on that road?
I would have to do a count on it. Share Road actually goes up and hooks onto a Big Rock, then you can take Big Rock across and come out. So it's off the Palouse Highway, but you can come back on, I think it's Keys.
Yeah, you can come back down.
And there's a couple other ways you can come back down. So it is a loop road, and everything else is gravel in the area until you get closer to the South Hill.
Which is why I think that got more traffic.
Yeah.
Because they were coming off Stevens onto Sharon because it was a better road.
Better road, yeah.
That was, so. And I guess, just, it may be worth looking to see how many property owners have been there since the initial cost in. Because that's one of the questions that I'll get is, well, I helped pay for this road, so now I want your tax dollars to go to, fix it or make it the same. But I think there's been a lot of turnover in the property up there.
There has been. The one gentleman confused me because he said that it was a paved road when he bought it, but then I looked back and he bought like in 2011, or 12. So he was right in this time frame where it was getting this oil treatment on it. But then the other guy at the top of the hill, I have to look back at his name. He said, "Oh yeah, you guys told us," and he goes, "I'm surprised this lasted this long." So it's that memory thing.
Yeah.
What was how long did you tell folks originally that you thought it would
They
last?
actually said that they didn't give it.
It was just a pilot test,
Yeah.
so you didn't have any.
No commitment because we didn't really know. Basically, they're complaining that they were dust oiling it every year and it was costing them money and it wasn't lasting. So again, Sharon Road looked like Stevens Creek only lasted about 2 years before we started looking at trying to do something else.
But that, we did look at it differently because of the trailhead.
Yeah.
So there was public access at the end of that road, so it wasn't just on the neighborhood.
So maybe just if you got just a few minutes, what we did in 19, there was a handful of roads, high volume gravel roads that we did a gravel road stabilization on. We tried 2 products. We tried basically making sure that the gravel had the right consistency, and the big thing we missed over the years is PI. Plasticity index, make sure there was enough clay or binder in it to hold it together. And so on those roads, we added bentonite clay and mixed it in with the graders, and then we spray it with mag chloride. And what that does is the clay holds the rock in place and the mag holds the moisture in the road to keep the clay from turning into dust and disappearing. Up north, we tried an oil-based product. It worked. The problem is our method of mixing it on the road would leave some pockets that weren't mixed well. And once you got a pothole in it, there was no fixing it. So the mag and the bentonite, it's like a gravel road. If we get a lot of potholes in it, we wait till it rains and we blade it, lay it back out, and it's a smooth road again. And that mag lasts us about a year, and as we've done it over time, and actually they're getting better and better. Newkirk is one of them because of the bridge closure. The Stevens Creek, there's a Spangle Creek, a Gibbs Road, high volume gravel road. So we tried it. It showed some success. The cost benefit though, I can't put a cost on, I haven't been able to yet, on what less complaints means. I mean, we know it's lasting longer, but it's tough to adjust. It's still a gravel road. It's tough to adjust.
And that was funded through the road shift. When we did the road shift, that was the additional funds that went in that provided the funding for those tests.
And we're still continuing. Every spring we blade them out, we water them, we roll them, and we put mag on them because that's the cheap part now. And then they've shown success that they last most of the summer.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we experienced, or at least I experienced, was when you did the road, everybody loved it. And when it fell apart, oh dear God. I mean, it was like they got used to a better surface, and now everything was disproportionately worse than it was before. And so it's like, oh dear God, you can't do anything and win.
Well, yeah, I mean, like Newkirk, I think
Yeah,
what you're
Newkirk
talking about,
is, yeah.
it would look great. And then, but when it broke down, it would break down and they complain. It's like, well, this is still better than our normal gravel roads, but
Yes.
it wasn't what they were used to. So it's that expectation, managing that the best we can. So, any questions?
So good.
Did you know that would be part of your job in road management, is like managing human expectations?
You know,
It's kind of psychological.
no, but I've learned that what's important to one person is maybe not important to the next, and try to manage all that. But it's fun. I look at it as an education, try to educate the citizen that calls, so hopefully they'll share it with their neighbors. And again, I didn't know much coming from the city. I didn't know much about gravel roads, and I've learned there's a whole science behind those. And we still have room to improve, I'm sure. It's just trying to find that right tool that works for us.
But just as a reminder, we are officially in the dry season, and our gravel roads only deteriorate from here until fall. So, and without water, we don't have any tools.
The last rain we had back in June, we had several work overtime on that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, trying to, because really by Monday, the wind had taken most of the moisture out of the road bed, and then it just doesn't pack back down.
So if I could grab you after this meeting for, I've got one property owner that we did some ditching and reculverting, and we did his neighbors, but not him. And now it's ponding and stuff, so I can give you an address and maybe we can find a fix to that.
We can take a look at it.
Yeah.
I'll look at what happened. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You want us to work with Brenda on scheduling that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I'm just trying to figure out who kind of then with this Mr. Owen not there, who's kind of the one we would talk to.
Yeah, and I know we've talked with his nephew or grandson, so maybe we'll reach out to him.
Okay.
Let's see if we can make
And then is Ken Clausen one of the people that is called in?
Doesn't ring a bell to me, but I don't get all the calls, so.
So, okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you, you guys have a great day.
Like Randy, do you ever still coming?
Here she comes.
Tommy,
Raise
a sorry, catch
Got a pinch hit, I guess.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're here today, or Tessa's here. We're gonna go through the second quarter budget amendments.
Good morning. These will be on your preliminary public hearing July 11th. And then final public hearing will not be until August 8th due to vacations and holidays and stuff. So we have a little while before they are final, but I will go through to set the stage a little for the 2023 budget in the general fund. We adopted the budget at the agency level. So anytime we move budget between one agency and another, we will be bringing it forward to you for formal amendment. So some of these are budget transfers within two general fund departments, not new money, just money moving places. So that is this first one here. Facilities maintenance will be getting a budget increase, while detention services has been offered to give up some budget to hire a facilities maintenance specialist manager to work out at the Geiger facility. So we are transferring budget to facilities to support that position. Item number 2 here is new money. It is revenue associated with elections to purchase some equipment to run the elections program. Item number 3 is new money for the aquatic sponsorship for the pools. This is something every year the Parks Department gets some money from different local groups to support swimming activities. Item number 4 is designated unreserved fund balance reserves in the Sheriff's Office federal DUFB. And so they are appropriating $5,000 for additional training budget. Item number 5, we are doing a transfer again. This is out of the Public Records Department to the Sheriff's Office to support a change in workload associated with public records requests for body camera related requests. Item number 6 is probably our biggest one and maybe the most complicated. We adopted the 2023 budget with contingency for our salary contract adjustments that we knew were coming but had not been finalized. So as we were planning the 2023 budget, we slotted a lot of contingency in non-departmental that now needs to be transferred to all the different departments based on the 1553, 1553S contracts and then non-rep COLA for 2023. So this, we worked very diligently to itemize every single person and the change in salary and the associated FICA costs with it to ensure that every department will be covered for the positions that were authorized as planned as part of the 2023 budget. Yes.
So I noticed a pretty good bump there in the commissioner's line item. What occurred that we didn't anticipate there?
The salary commission for the raises for the commissioners.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And so that affected all of our elected officials, all of our ORs, and then the judges also got increases. That was a big chunk here for Superior Court, District Court, things like that. So we've contemplated all of that through this one massive transfer.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. On to the next page, Ron. We'll look at our other funds. So we planned for the entire fairgrounds HVAC roof project, and we are just kind of finalizing where some of the funds were coming from. So this is $1.5 million from ARP funds. We'd originally planned for maybe it to come from the state, but now that we've finalized the funding of that project, this is appropriating those dollars. The last 2 items for other funds here are related to the Doris Morris Learning Center. The first was fund balance needing to be appropriated for unanticipated construction costs. And then the second is some revenue donation money to purchase equipment for the facility. And then the rest of the items are all various different grants and contracts that the board has already accepted. Most of them are juvenile related. A lot of our state funding comes on July 1st, so that is what most of these are.
For the non-departmental, is there alignment between what we kind of expected for that versus what we're doing now?
Yeah, we actually had a little bit more in the budget than this amount.
So it leaves us with a little bit of extra contingency.
What's the difference roughly? That listed here.
Yeah, it's around a half
Half
million.
million, I wanna say, is left.
We had 5.5 in there.
And is this something you do once a year? Kind of correction for non-departmental?
We would typically, if at all possible, plan for this as part of the adopted budget. Because these wage contracts were after kind of our initial planning, we did not build them into the budget for each department. So like for the 2024 budget, all of the wage increases that are contractually obligated have been contemplated.
So we would not expect to see this next year in our budget process. We will probably plan those in the department level also this year.
So
And
does that,
that's what we're currently contemplating anyway.
so offhand, what remains in that non-departmental budget line then, after the transfers?
It's about $500,000 roughly.
Oh, that's it. I thought it was a higher number at the beginning of the year.
Non-departmental has a large budget for all sorts of different things. This was
but
probably
this was the
This
line.
one
funding
specific,
source,
yes.
Okay,
Yep.
got that.
Yeah, we had a special line just for this.
Thank you.
All right.
See no other questions, thank you. Yes.
Some copies here, you might have it on your screen as well, or there's a PowerPoint that goes along.
I've been
Fancy
waiting,
little cover.
I've been waiting all year for this.
Big logo.
Thank you.
Different color.
Is it different color? Oh, okay, that's the difference.
Every year it's a different.
Every year we get
Thank you.
Keep giving it to us until he gets it right.
Yeah, keep trying, year after year.
Just kidding, you know that.
Well, good morning, commissioners, and thanks for the time to allow me to present the annual report from the Risk Management Department. Even though it's a 2023 annual report, I just want to remind you that the data is from the previous year, 2022. I put together a little slideshow just to kind of supplement the actual report itself, just to go over a couple of the key items in the report. 2022 accomplishments, our claims subrogation program, which goes after at-fault members of the public for when they might take out our guardrail or run into our vehicle or hit one of our buildings or something like that. We were able to recover a little over $72,000 last year with that program. We had a big program where we went in and did security and safety assessments of all of the, or attempted to do all of the different work areas throughout Spokane County. We recognized about 110 different work areas, and we were able to complete 77 of those in 2022, a pretty monumental task. Again, with that, we rewrote the emergency plan policy, which is in our accident prevention program, which took a policy that was focused just on emergency evacuation and incorporated shelter in place and lockdown into that policy. Also simplifying it, making it pretty standard for all the different work areas, easy to update, and again, we were able to issue 77 of those completed emergency plans this year, we're already, I think we have about 10 left. That's it. So we're continuing to work on that. We also, there was a big conversion that, we administrate our commercial driver's license program in Spokane County. All of our CDL drivers, we keep their driver qualification files and stay compliant with DOT requirements. And one of the big conversions in 2022 was called Clearinghouse from the Federal Motor Safety Carriers Association, where they now are the one-stop shop for all of the information regarding previous employer information, drug and alcohol testing, return to work, all those type of things. And we are now fully compliant with that. And it actually made life a lot easier. Instead of chasing down previous employers, when we get a new hire, we can simply go to the clearinghouse and get all that done in a day. Again, we also upgraded the code red system, our notification system that took over for SINS a couple years ago, where we added employee emails to that system. So not only will it send a text for those phone numbers that are registered in the system, but also email as well. Big improvement there. And then we continue to focus on trending workplace injuries, so we know where to focus and shift our energies when it comes to loss control efforts throughout the county with all our exposures. For 2023s, again, we want to complete all of those workplace assessments. With that, we've collected tons of data, both safety and security wise, and I'm currently working on a security improvement priorities plan, which really recognizes all of the work areas, not just the buildings with the courts, but countywide, whether they're on campus or satellite, identifying those areas where their security platform might be a little bit below average. And so we can, if any money is available, we can focus that money on the priorities needed in the county to bring up areas that might be not as secure as they should be. My security manager retired at the end of April, and we've gone through the process and made the offer, hired a new security manager who starts July 10th. Pretty excited about that. He's currently a U.S. Marshal, and he's retiring as a Marshal and taking 2 or 3 days off, and then he's going to start up in Spokane County. So he's going to be bringing a plethora of security knowledge and insight and great personality, lots of experience. I think it's really going to add a big spark to our security program and be able to even take it to the next level. So real excited about that.
Steve, speak a little bit to the changes you already kind of have in your mind for how that position does look different than what you saw before.
Yeah, sure. So this position is going to be on campus from 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday, because that's the county business hours, and Ashley and I both feel that security presence is needed. I'll remind you that the security manager is not a first responder. What we classify him or her as is the initial responder. So this person, when there's a security event or some recognized incident that is occurring throughout the campus, we can send the security manager right away. He's going to be an armed position, and primarily that's for self-protection. As we experienced over the last several years, some through the homeless camps and some of the other issues we had, for instance, over by the parking lot at the health building, we had folks with weapons, we had folks with drug paraphernalia, folks that were high and pretty much out of their mind. And even going into that situation and not be able to defend yourself just didn't make any sense. But yet we still need to get, because we have employees here all the time, we need to have a presence so they can at least get there. The security manager is going to be well identified He's gonna have clothing that represents him as the security manager. All the time, whether it's a jacket, whether it's a shirt, whether it's a vest, whatever it has, we're gonna, I finally found another embroiderer so I can have some clothing made up that identifies him in that role. And yeah, I mean, I think he will be able to add a much higher level of effective training as well and seminars. I mean, he's created everything from, you know, newsletters and security memos in the federal court system here in the Eastern District to creating some of his own training on security awareness. And I can tell you, one of the things I'm hearing lately, which is somewhat disturbing, is, you know, we have parks workers and we have assessors, residential appraisers that are out in the field, and they're really catching some flack and they're catching some threats. And there's some activities that we haven't seen in the past. So one of his first tasking is going to be to actually go with those folks to their areas and identify better ways to protect themselves. You know, because quite honestly, yeah, they can call crime check, they can even call 911, but you know, whether they're going to get a response at a park or at a resident in a quick amount of time is a low likelihood, quite honestly. So there's other and better ways, whether it means teaming up, whether it means having some pepper spray as a self-defensive tactic, and make sure they have the training in those regards. But we really need to put a lot more emphasis on taking care of our employees that are out in the field, just because of the threats that continue to increase recently. Getting into the claims and costs, really the bottom line is the cost of risk, right? The commissioners who have been here for a while have heard me harp about this. The cost of risk is basically a big view, a 30,000-foot view on how your risk management program is doing. Industry standard is 3%, and that 3% is total expenses for the organization versus the risk management program costs. For the last 16 years, and including 2022, we've been below the industry standard. 22 marked the highest at 2.77 that we've had in the last 16 years. But as I briefed before, 2022 was also what we call a 1 in 20-year event as far as liability exposure. And a big reason for that, a couple reasons. One is we had a lot of claims that were kind of put on hold, put on the back burner, right? Lawsuits and claims during the COVID time. And when the COVID restrictions started lifting and the courts started getting back to their normal mode, those all matured and we moved forward with either going to court or settling a lot of those claims. So,
Ask a question.
Sure, certainly.
When you say total risk program cost was 11.8 million in 2022,
correct.
What is that specifically referring to?
So the total cost for the risk management program involves all of the insurance that we purchase, whether it's through the risk pool coverage or several different ancillary coverages. One of these page 7 will show just the risk transfer amounts, which was 4.5 million, a little over 4.5 million. It also is the losses that we actually pay, not only in third-party liability, but also property first-party liability, as well as workers' compensation. The administrative costs that we pay to the state for workers' compensation, and then the administration of the staff. In other words, the costs of all the salaries and our M&O and so on and so forth.
So would it include jury verdicts that are largely covered by the risk pool? Or would only be the county's share of anything and then the premiums? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Yep, just what we actually paid.
Got it.
So again, 11.8 million, that's about 2 million more than what we have pretty much averaged for the past several years. That won't go down in 2023 because of the Thurman settlement and the extra $2 million that came out of county coffers. But outside of that 2 million, everything else is trending back to where it should be. A lot less on, and quite honestly, the outstanding lawsuits that we have remaining. There is one that we know will probably surpass our deductible, but that's risk pool money, but in no way will come even close to our limit that we carry with the pool. There's a couple of claims on appeal that were either dismissed or thrown out. We would still feel strongly about those, but you know, the total exposure from the lawsuits that are remaining are nowhere near what we had over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, we had last year, I think we had 5 of the 8 jail death lawsuits come to maturity and those deaths were in 2018. Just shows you how long it took before they finally resolved. The good news is, though, that the 4-year average over the last 4 years is still 2.43. Again, below 3%. Still shows we have an effective program. And unfortunately, no matter what we do and how much we do, sometimes, you know, the social inflation or a nuclear verdict can knock those numbers just way above average. In our workers' compensation program, which is page 5, our hours increased about 3%. So we're right at about 3.7 million hours of county workers. The time loss paid out decreased by about 20%. So that was $137,000 less than the prior year. But our partial permanent impairment increased by $185,000, and that was about a 44% increase. That number really kind of bounces and is very volatile because partial permanent impairments, anytime somebody has a surgery on a knee or a shoulder or a back or something of that nature, you know, they're never restored to 100% before, you know, the injury occurred. So that partial permanent impairment is a number that's set by legislature that L&I pays that's supposed to make up that difference.
Quick question.
You bet.
What's the story in detention services for the change over the past year?
Those jail deaths. Oh, and the
For
workers' comp?
Yeah, workers' comp,
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So you might recall that we had the preferred coverage for COVID-19. And although we had very few hospitalizations and serious medical costs, what the workers' comp fund did do was it paid the time loss for when they were quarantined or you know, not able to come back to work for that. You know, it started at 10 days and it went down to 7 days and went down to 5 days and 3 days. But you know, the good thing is that the CARES Act actually paid us back for about half of what we spent in that time loss for detention services. Unfortunately, it couldn't go back 2 years, so it could only recognize the 2022 year, and it reimbursed the fund about $135,000.
And detention was different than the other departments. L&I had some very clear rules around what types of positions and work would qualify for coverage under a worker's injury. And so that's why you see such a high number with detention rather than other departments, because detention specifically was one of those groups that basically stated if you had any sort of potential exposure in the workplace, that it would be covered under workers' comp. And because we continually had inmates and officers testing positive for COVID, we had a lot of time lost, to Steve's point, and it was actually ARPA funding, not CARES, similar, yeah, right? But because of the rules around ARPA funding, we couldn't backdate, right? And so, to Steve's point, we would have loved to have been able to cover all of COVID, but because of the funding type, we could only cover it from when we were able to use those ARP funds.
I should have assumed COVID was the answer.
Yep.
And you'll notice too on those graphs, the top graphs are the number of claims, right? So, yeah, detention services really blew upward. But in the second or the lower graph, you'll notice that the overall cost actually decreased.
Right.
So even though we had a lot more claims and a lot of them were COVID, we didn't have quite as many, well, not nearly as many serious injury claims that we had seen in the past from fights with inmates or different types of exposures. On liability claims, the first graphs are those of our first party or our property claims. Claim frequency stayed steady at about 194. The severity decreased though by about 183,000. So we didn't pay as much out in our fixing our property, which is a good thing. Third party liability, the claim frequency increased by to 102 claims, and the severity increased by quite a bit. We paid about $2 million out of our coffers for liability in 2022. And remember, I'll remind you that it did include the Richmond or the Thurman cases. That'll be next year's report when I come back with a different color. Risk transfer, that's a big chunk, $4.5 million. You'll notice the big blue square there on page 7. That's our liability coverage through the risk pool. That's by far the biggest chunk, and we continue to see it go up by over 20% every year. Just again, because it's not just Spokane County, it's all over the state, all over the country, that juries are just awarding unbelievable money for liability issues against governments. Just really sending a message. And again, a lot of the different coverage we have, I mean, we have liability coverage and excess workers' comp, we have property coverage, we have, surety bonds, we have our aircraft liability, underground storage tank, crime insurance. So we really are well covered as far as our risk transfer and trying to transfer some of that risk onto the commercial carriers. A couple of other noteworthy accomplishments, especially from our loss control staff. We did get back in the groove and were able to hold 28 safety and health classes in person, which saw about 860 students or employees, which was good. Our virtual training skyrocketed. It's really increased a lot over the last 3 years. I think COVID kind of kicked that going, and we saw the opportunity there to do as much training as we possibly could through virtually. And there was about 1,229 different training events that happened through our portal. We conducted 120 hazard and assessments and facility inspections. We had 32 on-call incidents after hours that our loss control does their liability assessment on to ensure that we get a good snapshot of something that occurs outside of normal working hours and things that get our loss control on-call folks going is either a serious injury or fatality on a county maintained roadway, any county property damage, any county employee injury, and any injury or property loss that occurs. We are 100% compliance with our DOT drug and alcohol testing program. Even above that, because we also comply with our drug-free workplace policy here at the county. So we do on occasion do some reasonable suspicion testing or some follow-up testing, and my staff is all certified nationally through DACIA, and our facility is also certified. And then our risk pool kicked in and sponsored 25 different virtual training events that are open to all the county members, and we had about 93 staff members attend those virtual training events.
wanna say thank you to Steve. I think, it's a big ask to do. It's a small team, but they really go above and beyond, I think, which shows in these numbers. From my past life, a lot of this stuff was outsourced, right? You'd be having facilities do your drug testing or workers' comp administered through LNI, and Steve and his team do that stuff in-house. So I think it's just really important, and I'm thankful that he was able to come and share that with you, especially for, our new commissioners. There's a lot to wrap your brain around, and even from my perspective, when I walked into risk, I realized it was much bigger than what I've seen even in my past life.
Well, again, I thank the commissioners and CEO and senior management for letting us do what we do. We love it.
No, and I'm excited to see the change in the position with retirement and being able to look at that position differently. So I think that'll be really good.
Yeah, I will bring him by and introduce him when we get him on board and get them all on board.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love the charts.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are fun charts.
Charts are
Thank you.
good.
Yeah, that takes us to you.
I don't have any miscellaneous. You do?
I do. Okay, so item miscellaneous, I just need to, as the chair, sign a letter to the Department of Health on the treatment services moving from the building downtown to the 8th Avenue building, which we'd all agreed to, we've all known it. Department of Health has like a form that has to get filled out that Michelle and Craig Riddle, Michelle Fossum, the attorney for the Health District, and Craig Riddle, who used to be our grants manager here, who's over at the Health District, filled out for me. So I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that I was signing that, that we all knew about treatment services moving, which we have, and that we are okay with that. So very good.
Just want to say I went and toured last week, saw the new work being done on the new facility. It was really, I had never been to the current treatment program, and so got to start there, see the limited space that they have, and then really how it's being set up in the new location is a night and day. And they talked about the parking situation. There's actually quite a few parking spaces there. They're hoping to get a bus stop right in front, which will take some work with STA. But anyway, I encourage everybody to go check out the new facility. They did have a town hall, and Amber may know this being on the board, but apparently there was no attendees.
At LC, they had
Right.
a parent, they opened it up to speak to, well, I think anyone could attend, but the target audience was LC parents.
Right, since it's so close to the high school.
And I was at Shaw speaking to some students there, so I wasn't able to attend, but I guess it was, there was a lot of
no
concerns.
folks there, and they said they're not really getting any letters or emails from people.
I think probably until it moves. Unfortunately, people don't really pay attention to changes until the change happens, but I appreciated that after we suggested that the treatment services reach out to Spokane schools and really make sure they were fully aware, and they hosted the meeting, so Spokane schools hosted it. So anyway, that was a good faith effort to connect with students and families there, so.
And what was the attendance?
I don't think anyone came.
Oh.
But that was
From the public.
From the meeting, from what I understand, the treatment services director met with Spokane Public Schools administrators. They said, well, let's host a meeting, and they publicized it to families there. But that was Spokane Schools' suggestion to host a meeting there. So anyway, so I think there's been some good outreach and conversation with the school district, which I know was something that the board, as our HD board, really wanted to see happen. So.
Very good, okay, then I'll be signing that, just so the State Department of Health is aware that we know, and we know that it meets all the regulations, so. Okay. Anything
I do have a
else?
miscellaneous.
Okay.
She reminded me. So on On Monday, the 3rd, commissioners aren't meeting that week. That would have been our regularly scheduled strategic planning meeting on a Monday. Our next one would be the 17th, so question, do we want to just stay with the canceled 3rd, or do we want to slide it to the 10th and then have back-to-back strategic planning meetings on the 10th and the 13th of July? Question for the board.
Well, what items do we, did everyone give feedback to the items that we wanted to see come forward soon?
I've gotten feedback from most. We don't have anything right now set for the 10th per se.
Oh, I thought we had talked about looking at the strategic plan for the county, the old, the one that's maybe 6, 7 years old.
Oh, our posters? Those? Is that what you mean?
I think that's what you need.
Oh.
Probably the strategic plan we did, when.
Dixon stuff. Dixon's posters is
Well,
what she's talking about.
I'm just not the one that we talked about at the retreat, we shared out.
Yeah.
Those are Dixon's posters
Yeah.
and stuff.
Oh, it's not an official strategic plan.
Oh.
Well, it was.
Pre-me, but.
I think it's pre both of you.
Okay.
I don't believe there's any more like additional documents behind those posters. That's like an image. I mean, it's a poster. It sort of has the things we strive to do, but like there's no like supporting documents, I believe, behind
That was
those.
adopted.
Yeah.
Not that
Yeah,
I
we
know
did.
of. Is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
I'm getting some head shakes that no, there's not.
There's the mission statement, the value statements, all
Right.
that work. As far as like a strategic plan with like initiatives or goals that you would see, I wouldn't say I've seen that anywhere. I could probably go search and dig, but that's not published. Like the main stuff I've found published are the pillar picture and then the poster with our values and our statement and our mission.
So we did the pillars, and then we had initiatives under each one of the pillars. And so that's one of the things that Dixon was responsible for initiating and or implementing and yada, yada, yada. And so we did for, God, I think maybe a couple of years, try and actually implement those elements and stuff. But with time, that has fallen off the radar and off the table, kind of a deal. So it probably is worthy of, at least taking a look at and see how much of that is still relevant. I mean, we accomplished quite a bit, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where the details as to what the initiatives were underneath each of those.
I could probably pull it out. There's a good chance I probably still have a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
So I think it was just that the pillars were being used as we move forward to what we did and where we were meeting as we came up with different projects.
Which they were customer service, financial stewardship, public engagement, and employee development.
Yep, that was it.
It looks like the week of the 24th and the 31st, those are we're not planning to have meetings those weeks, is that right? So in light of that, I mean, I think it makes sense to kind of tentatively plan on both the 10th and 17th for strategic planning. If we end up not needing it, we can always cancel it, but we do have a couple out weeks coming up, so that's my vote.
And I think I'm the one that's probably delinquent in getting you my topics and stuff, so I can get that to you today or tomorrow.
We had all the feedback from the commissioners in our retreat, and then we, like last time we reviewed these a couple weeks ago, assimilated them down into kind of key topical areas. So some of the things we think about for the commissioners is what are those next ones? We've got some from the staff perspective that we could start bringing forward, and just like we did last time with the planning overview, the OAC. So there's another couple of ones that are probably timely that we could queue up for both the 10th and the 17th. But anything else that you all see that you want to add on would be helpful to hear. So, well, we'll plan on the 10th right now and see what we can pull together in advance of that meeting.
So you'd like some feedback from us of that list that you sent out, which items we may want to.
Yeah, we'll have to see where we are in being able to bring information together, because we wanna make sure we have some good conversations and dialogue around.
Well, it
the
seems like
content.
the homelessness regional collaboration, the presentation's tomorrow. Then we'll wanna circle back as a board to discuss next steps, reviewing the proposed interlocal and setting up future meetings potentially. So, I mean,
That could be the 10th.
that, I think it's, I mean, you could do that in a briefing or you could do that in strategic planning, but
I think it's gonna need a briefing, or strategic plan.
yeah, it's gonna take us several months. It's not like it's gonna be
And
happening in
then
a week.
queued up too, was to
Yeah.
ask who was gonna, so everybody's invited, they say it's not, you don't have to RSVP for it or anything like that, it's not a ticketed event, it's at the convention center just tomorrow morning, and I believe, is it 8?
It starts at 8.
Okay, so, yeah, 8 o'clock tomorrow in the, at the convention center, and Centennial Ballroom, I believe is where it's at. And, yeah, no tickets needed, just come if you wanna watch, and so.
Yep, Centennial
We'll see.
Ballroom.
I will not be in attendance.
You told me
I
that.
have had a previous meeting that's been on the books for a long time, so this was never,
So, yeah, I would think it'd probably be beneficial for us to have a discussion about it, sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd support on the 10th, us doing a deep dive into the proposal and seeing if, what it is. I mean, it's a proposal, there's no guarantee that any jurisdiction signs on, but I think the longer we wait, the fuzzier our memories get of sort of what's in there and what led us here, so let's have a discussion about it, I would say.
Okay, we'll queue that one up for the morning of the 10th then. That addresses my question on yes or no and content. All right. And then I don't have any other miscellaneous.
Okay, I have one more miscellaneous, just seeing, so, Joe Adder had requested, I had signed the contract yesterday on the CDBG
Yes.
funds. Do you know what we need to do there?
Randy knows.
Yes,
Okay,
we've got, it's
is it taken care of?
Yeah, there's
Yes,
there's more to the email which we can talk through, and that wasn't quite accurate in there. What George has shared with me is there's a couple of outstanding invoices that were just submitted earlier this week. One, I think, let's see, one 2 weeks ago.
Oh, we actually all just got an email 2 minutes ago from George
Okay.
about the very topic.
I guess I'm not as concerned about, I know we'll pay, we'll reimburse them for their, I think the concern was that this purchase, they're purchasing a piece of property, right?
Yeah.
And if they wait to be reimbursed, there's a concern
That
about.
was their closing date.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've already extended the closing date a couple times, I believe.
Yep, so as I understand it, the contract that was signed by Family Promise just last week and that
I signed
Commissioner CUNY signed yesterday had in there specific provisions on reimbursement. So it was already clear when they signed it that this is the way the HUD dollars work from CDBG, and it was a reimbursement-based one, and we strive to turn around things within 30 days. It's not unusual, it's our standard approach of doing it, it's what the HUD requirements are, and that was known when the contract was signed. So,
The nature of the request, as I understand it, is there anything that we can do to help them bridge this period so that they can close on the property, otherwise they'll lose the property?
I don't know whether they'll lose the property or not. I don't know what their financial situation looks like in terms of having monies in reserve to be able to acquire then seek reimbursement. It's the same way all of our other contracts work with them. So I'm not sure why this is unique.
Well, he's suggesting that it's the process of getting the contract through the county system took longer than expected.
Right.
And therefore, the window for the purchase and sale got moved several times, or at least once.
Right.
From what I understand, we had to do an environmental assessment through our HUD process. That environmental assessment needed to have a property identified. The property was identified in maybe early May. So I'm not sure if we could have went any faster on it. They may have been working to identify property separate and outside of this. The call for funding that went out that you all approved just got approved, I think, maybe a month ago in the annual action plan. That came out of the HCDCA. So the HCDCA reviewed all the applications. And then they made some recommendations. One of the recommendations was to fund this particular acquisition. Now that's on the 2023-2024 cycle for CDBG, which wouldn't have been eligible for even dispersing until October 1st. George went and found some uncommitted CDBG dollars that were already in hand today to accelerate this opportunity. So he's already rolled it forward 3 to 4 months to be able to close that gap for them. So he has found some creativity to try to get this, be able to be reimbursed on a more timely basis.
So they need to find the gap. You're saying they need to find the gap funding for the time?
I don't know how they do that. I'm just speaking to how our, from what I understand, how our CDBG contracts were coming from HUD and then coming. So we wouldn't have even, based on when Family Promise and other organizations applied, they applied for a funding cycle that wouldn't be available until October 1. So George is able to find some unallocated CDBG dollars that we have right now to be able to move that acquisition reimbursement up earlier.
So does George have the necessary approval from us to be able to make that disbursement on a quicker schedule?
I don't know that it is an action by the board to allow it to happen earlier. We'll have to look and see whether or not HUD allows us to swap from a reimbursement basis to a pay in advance basis. So I don't know if it's a board action, Commissioner, as opposed to what is our requirements underneath HUD.
So if George is sitting on $500,000 of unallocated CDBG funds, what will it take to release those funds?
This contract that the board authorized last week actually allows that. It already takes those funds that were unallocated and now allocates that to this project.
Okay, so those funds can be released when invoices are submitted? Is that the case? So they've got 2 invoices sitting on the desk now. They've got 1 more that's supposed to be in by the end of this week. So that's 3 invoices that I think will total, as I got out of the emails, around $300 and some thousand.
I think the one specific to this contract is over $400,000. That invoice hasn't been received yet. That's the contract to acquire the property, I believe, once they close. The other ones are separate programs.
Okay.
But
So
they're probably thinking
they
of their
don't-
cash
They don't
flow.
have the money to close without getting reimbursed on some of the expenses they've already incurred. So they've, as I understand the chain of events, they've already exhausted their line of credits. They've already done all of the other measures to try and fill the gap while they wait for the time period when this new funding is available and stuff. So
Randy?
I understand.
The amount that we owe him, we have $190,000 going out today in 2 invoices.
Okay.
But we are the small amount that is owed to them. There are other entities that owe them more than we do.
Okay, so that's what I understood. I understand they have like $1 million outstanding from all entities, of which we're 190,000 of them. So it's not the entire picture that the commissioners are getting from that email.
And those invoices are being processed today.
So they may be waiting for money from the state or the city.
State, Fed, and city, both cities, City of Spokane, City of Valley too.
Okay.
So we're a piece of it. We're not the entirety of it, you can get
I'm
that
sure
from the
probably some
email.
use of those.
Yeah, the email
Okay,
made it
yes.
sound like we were the
We were the only
entirety of
ones.
it. That's why I asked, looking
No,
for
I know,
information.
I know. A lot more strings on it.
Oh, yeah,
I
there
believe
was
that, if I may, I believe that email also said he needed that contract that you signed yesterday, because he was going to take that to try to get additional funding from other sources like a bank or line of credit.
Okay.
I believe that's what that email also says.
I think we are doing everything we can within the constructs of the contracts to make sure that we're reimbursing timely. And then we've got this one set up for the property acquisition. As soon as we have an invoice from them, they can get that reimbursed timely as well.
What you can do.
I can't pay in advance.
Not from what I understand from our contract through HUD.
No, I mean, I don't think we can.
Last week before or so, Jesse Bank came in and presented the proposed expansions of for the Northeast PDA. I guess the city of Spokane approved it last night, so I guess we're left. Can we have that queued up for the 11th?
Yeah, from what I understood, we both were waiting the legal description and I think the final GIS maps to attach. I'm not sure what, I haven't heard whether those have been completed or not, so I'm not sure what the city council have approved.
Okay.
But
yeah,
where Jesse knows is as soon as we get those things, then we'll put them into the commissioner's consent agenda for your action on.
Sounds good.
I don't know if it was a couple months ago, Juan Moss with the local film industry wanted to come and give an update on some of the new economic numbers around film production in Spokane and kind of what they're working on with their strategic plan to grow that industry. Is that something I kind of responded to him that we were changing up our meeting schedule to do the strategic and the working sessions, and I wasn't sure when he asked where we were with our process. Would that be something to have him come do on a strategic planning?
Yeah, I would
Like
say
on that Monday,
that would
like
be more of a strategic planning because it's not an action work.
Right. I was just thinking like when we get updates from the West Plains Chamber and the Valley Chamber, we could start putting more of those on that strategic planning day. So would it be okay to get back to him and see if he's available one of those 2 Mondays for the strategic, either the 10th or the 17th?
Is his ask still that we partner with hiring and pay a portion of a salary of sort of a film liaison for the region? Because they came in last year and made that pitch, and it's sort of the ask centered around having one person that could find, when they want to film in the region, that they would call, but also it seemed the biggest need was to know what permits they would need to film where. And at the time, our legal we don't really have, you can go film anywhere in unincorporated county, you don't have to get a permit. In the city does require permits. So it seemed like, well, why would we pay to essentially fund a need that was pretty much city centric? Because, if you wanna go film in unincorporated county, you can just do it.
Knock yourself out.
But yeah, apparently you need special permits if you wanna do that within the city of Spokane, so we didn't really see the desire, so I don't know,
think he
did
probably
he indicate
is,
that's
yeah.
his ask?
He did,
Again?
well, he did mention continuing the conversation about a film liaison commissioner and a workforce development program. So I have not received that presentation, so I think he was just circling back with updates, new projects, and then he probably still has that ask. So I don't know if anything's changed in your mind, but I haven't heard the updates or gotten the presentation.
I got the presentation, Ron and I went and met with a group and they made the presentation to us, and then asked if we could come before the full board. They did, so the 3 of us have seen it.
Okay, so maybe the 2 of us need to sit down and get that presentation.
And I mean, I think they're
I
doing
think
good things.
I received it individually.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Okay.
okay.
But it wasn't something we felt that it was worth funding from a county perspective, so.
Because the costs associated that they were talking about, there's none of those permit costs, is what you're saying.
Well,
this would help
The need
reduce.
was very city-centric, because they said, if a film company is coming in and they wanna film here, they were saying, they have to know who to contact to find out if
Oh,
we're
that's
filming,
why
if
it's
we're
like
filming in this jurisdiction, what do we need? But we said, well, if you're filming in unincorporated county, you don't need anything,
Don't need
just go
anything.
film.
Yeah.
So the only jurisdiction that requires
me.
anything extra is the city of Spokane, so it's like, then the city of Spokane should sort of
Alright,
hire
well,
that
I'll circle back with
person.
him and
Yeah.
chat with him, and maybe I can get the presentation and get updated and.
Because, I mean, it's interesting to get the presentation, but we're not, you know, especially at this point in time, I mean, we're already doing enough different economic development stuff that adding more to it,
And this had no benefit to
and
the
it didn't really
county.
have
I
a
mean, you know,
benefit to the county, so.
they were looking to us to provide them money so that they could pay fees to the city. That doesn't make any sense.
Or navigate the city's processes.
Yeah.
The city put hurdles in place, but they wanted us to fund,
They
to
want
fund
us
the
to fund the
person
hurdles.
to help people get over those hurdles.
Yeah.
Well, it may be that there's other duties for this person, or we can look at what other counties are doing around, you know, so I'll learn more and I'll circle back.
Yeah, I
mean, it is a conversation, how we wanna spend our economic development money in 2024, if we have a budget for it in 2024, so I just like to know what all the options are. But it'll be good to understand the return on the dollar for the film production here. Okay, that was my other little miscellaneous.
I definitely think that the homeless will take up a lot of time.
Yep.
I think we need to dig into all the documents that they share.
Exactly. Do you think we would want to invite either Rick, Gavin, or Teresa, or a combination of the three to be here on that day? Or do you think it would be better if it was just sort of us having the discussion at that point?
I don't know what you're wanting to dig into, but the documents were prepared by Jim Amacio and myself.
Oh.
Well, but there's context behind it.
Sure, yeah,
Like
exactly,
3
so
months of
that's why I asked.
But you weren't
Depends
at
on
those
what-
conversations,
I was
so-
not, we were
could've been
taking,
there,
we were
Chris.
taking direction from the three of them and producing the documents that they will be presenting Wednesday, so we're not necessarily endorsing the documents as written, we were the legal drafting team.
So are you suggesting we need outside counsel?
I'm not.
We didn't conflict you out.
Conflict you out,
Maybe
yeah.
tomorrow morning, we could just mention that, we could mention it tomorrow morning and just see, I know they're kind of wanting to hand off the work. And really
Well-
now, and I mean, now it's really us needing to negotiate the terms, right? If we wanna continue with the other jurisdictions.
Actually, I met with Teresa yesterday, and it sounded like they were not
They're not
looking to
handing
hand it off.
They keep saying that, but then they don't really let go.
Well,
They keep telling us, after the 28th,
Yeah.
it's up to
Yeah.
you.
But then every time I
Well,
see Rick, he's like, well, but you know, we'll be around.
The problem is they say the 28th, but they don't tell you what month or year. So it could be any one of them and stuff.
2025.
2025. No, evidently, the conversation, based upon my conversation yesterday with Teresa, is that they need a driving force, and so the three of them have agreed that they would continue to be the driving force to be able to bring this thing home so that they could try and have something implemented before the end of the year, because they didn't know that either the city or the county had the staffing or the energy to be able to follow through with, and also the history to be able to implement it and stuff. So that was as of 3:00 yesterday afternoon.
So I would say we probably wanna have the discussion ourselves, and we can come up with our list of questions for them. But I think we've got to, you know, I mean, we haven't looked at anything. You know, you guys have been in the meetings, and it's, what I hear is different than what you're hearing from what you guys did. So, I mean, so I think it's like, hear what they have to say tomorrow, and as I've tried to caution people, it took us 2 months to sign on to a letter, just saying we were gonna look at this. That, you know, it's not gonna happen overnight. This is just a starting point for the next phase. So,
I agree, I think we should discuss the documents, come up with any concerns, questions, and then I think that makes sense, and then we can bring them in, and then the other jurisdictions are gonna do the same thing. They're gonna have their concerns, and then we need to get back together if that's what we wanna do.
and I think we really need to document what those questions and concerns are and be able to present them to them, so that they know and we're clear on what those questions and concerns are that we all have.
Well, and I don't even know if it's that we give those questions and concerns back to Rick, Gavin, and Teresa. I think it's more if we amend the documents and tell the other jurisdictions, like, this is what it takes for us to sign on. And then they'll probably, I think it may just be more amongst the jurisdictions.
But
In order
I
to be
think-
a part, this is what we think.
But
And
what
then
I'm
the other
hearing is
jurisdictions
maybe
may say, no,
they're willing to kind
that's
of
a
be the
deal break.
go-betweens
Yeah, I
a
don't
little
know.
bit and help with that process is what I'm hearing, because.
That was the sense that I got yesterday.
Okay, we'll see, but
But again, that was 3 o'clock yesterday,
Yeah.
so. God
Things
knows
move
what could
quickly.
happen today.
alright, well, I'll be there tomorrow morning, you'll be there, Josh.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Okay, great. Well, good showing.
Yes, yeah, I will be in Seattle with WASAC, so I will not be there. That's the reason why I'm not there. So,
We have one exec session item. I don't know if anyone else does.
Okay, I've got one that probably more information, won't take more than 5 minutes.
okay, and I've got a law library meeting at 12:15 that I gotta get to, so.
Ours should only take 10.
Very good.
So
very
mine,
good.
mine is labor negotiations, RCW 4230, 144, with all 5 commissioners, Chris Anderson, myself, Ashley Cameron. 10 minutes, no action.
Pending potential litigation, I'll cut mine to 3 minutes.
And who's gonna be in it?
The commissioners and these 2 guys.
Scott Timmons and Chris Anderson. Okay, so we are gonna go into executive session. It is
Be specific.
Also known as these 2 guys.
yeah,
AKA.
we will
It's
say
different
it's
than 5
11,
guys.
we'll say we'll be going in at noon as we transfer the electronics. And we'll be until 12:15. And if we extend, no decisions are expected to be made, and if we extend, then we will know. And then we will adjourn this meeting after the executive session, and we will come back, or